Hi, I'm Dan. You should know that by now because this is a part two of a two-part video series. So if you haven't watched part one already, go watch part one, please. Don't watch part two without it. If you do watch part two without watching part one, it's on you because I'm going to reference stuff in part one. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's on you. This is intended to be the last of the two-part series. I did split them up for the sake of time and to split them up for a different focus. So the first part is really about data and media around COVID. And the second part is about political views. And specifically, I've only had time to really dig into some of the presidential candidate views. In fact, we're going to take the easy route and actually just let them speak for themselves and then compare it against what we know. So I wanted to keep this part separate. I expect this will probably take 45 minutes to an hour. We're going to have at least 20 minutes worth, 15 to 20 minutes worth of actual video because we're going to let the presidential candidates speak for themselves. Okay. And that said, a little housekeeping first. If you see me looking all over the place, it's because I'm looking at a TV. Okay, I've got my computer hooked to the TV. That is my TV monitor. So it's kind of behind the webcam. And so I'm kind of like looking all around. That's why. But you're not going to keep seeing me because I'm going to switch over to the slideshow mode here. Let me do that right now. All right. Let me get the video panel up. And I'll move it over here for now so that we get the video during recording. Now, more housekeeping. This is part two of a video series. It's because I can't stay silent about this evil virus now that we have statistics. I've been watching them. There's an election coming up. I just need to offer what I know to other people. That's basically what this is. Whatever I know, I feel obligated to somehow get into other people's hands as best I can. And I can distribute to way more people using media like this than I can in one-on-one conversations, although I love those too. So I've already reviewed statistics. I've already reviewed data. That stuff was in part one. If you haven't watched it, there will be a link from this video to part one. Go back and watch it wherever you found this video. I'm going to post this first on YouTube. So go back and watch part one if you haven't watched it, because that's where the data is actually discussed. My name is Dan. I do believe in loving and not giving up. Love doesn't flee, love keeps persisting. So nickname Stubborn Love by somebody very important to me. And I just love America. I love God and I love America. I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm going to keep this in non-spiritual, mostly non-spiritual discussion. I'm not going to have many of my Jesus views or viewpoints here, even though Jesus is everything to me. I'm not going to make it about that because I want people to consume it, be able to consume it, no matter what their opinion is, and not get offended and want to turn it off because they're hearing about Jesus, you know. So that said, I will be doing a separate video at some point after the election. Probably I plan to do a separate video on the follower of Jesus, a Christian, but I prefer to say follower of Jesus these days. Those people who really actually are disciples of him, and how we should be looking at this whole COVID thing through or maybe a different lens than everybody else. Anyways, know that that's coming. Look out for it. Subscribe to the channel. if you want to get it when it comes out. With that, let's keep going. All right, let me get my slides moving here. Oh wow, look at that. The motion is actually working. Huh, it didn't work before. So this is part 2 of the 2-part series. This is a presidential candidate positions on COVID-19. And I was blessed. I got to tell you, I was so blessed because I'm late doing this. I would have liked to have done it a month ago, and I didn't get to it. But I actually started doing it October 22nd. Okay, is when I pulled the data last. But I'd intended to that week. So October 20th, I turned on the final presidential debate. And what do I know? The first thing they start talking about is COVID, and they had like a 20-minute discussion on COVID. It was great. And I thought, you know what? Pretty much everything you and I need to know is right here in the debate. We can get a sense for their views, what they think, and they make some statements, and we'll analyze that. So we're looking for truth, and we're looking for untruth, right? We're looking for suspect things. We're looking for substantiated claims, and for the substance of what they're saying, so that we can formulate our own views and vote accordingly. Now, COVID being just one of several different factors that would be important to someone, of course, but I would argue that for all of us, it's a very important factor right now. When you look at our economy, when you look at when you look all around and you look at all the masks, and you look at the signs saying you have to wear a mask, and you look at how our lives have changed this year and how there's a lot of division over it, it is a very, very important topic for this debate. So let's arm ourselves with facts. We're going to actually do this by watching the candidates. So we're going to start with President Donald Trump. And I have taken the transcript. So first we're going to watch, and then we're going to read the excerpt of the transcript. And that came from this source here, rev.com, just so you know. Just copied it in here. So that's not my transcript, but go there if you want to see the whole write-up. There's also one I think USA Today did, and some others. So there's other transcripts out there. But this one is the one that came from rev.com. Seems to be pretty accurate to what was actually spoken. With that said, let's go ahead and start watching the president now. Let me move this thing over too. Now, just so you know, because this isn't my content, I've embedded YouTube videos into the PowerPoint here so that we can watch them. And the URL to those videos is right there below the player window. And all of these videos are from PBS NewsHour, but there's a lot of different agencies that streamed this. I think NBC was a host. There's, C-SPAN, ABC, CBS, I'm sure, Yahoo Finance, and all sorts, Sky News, all sorts of agencies streamed this. I think Telemundo and others outside of America too. So go watch from the source that you want. If you want to go watch this, I do encourage you to watch it before you vote if you haven't. It is pretty interesting. And just know that this isn't mine, but it is coming from YouTube. Okay, so let's start watching. And I've got my cheat sheet over to the side here. So if you see my head bobbing over there, That is why, because I'm going to have to look for when to stop it. Unfortunately, with the, I guess it's the copyrighted content or whatever that's on YouTube, they don't have a stop. Like the end time doesn't work, so I have to manually stop it. Let's get going here.
And so with that, if you're ready, let's start. And we will begin with the fight against the coronavirus. President Trump, the first question is for you. The country is heading into a dangerous new phase. More than 40,000 Americans are in the hospital tonight with COVID, including record numbers here in Tennessee. And since the two of you last shared a stage, 16,000 Americans have died from COVID. So please be specific. How would you lead the country during this next stage of the coronavirus crisis? 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
So, as you know, 2.2 million people modeled out were expected to die. We closed up the greatest economy in the world in order to fight this horrible disease that came from China. It's a worldwide pandemic. It's all over the world. You see the spikes in Europe and many other places right now. If you notice, the mortality rate is down 85%. The excess mortality rate is way down and much lower than almost any other country. And we're fighting it, and we're fighting it hard. There is a spike. There was a spike in Florida, and it's now gone. There was a very big spike in Texas. It's now gone. There was a very big spike in Arizona. It's now gone. And there are some spikes and surges in other places. They will soon be gone. We have a vaccine that's coming. It's ready. It's going to be announced within weeks, and it's going to be delivered. We have Operation Warp Speed, which is the military is going to distribute the vaccine. I can tell you from personal experience that I was in the hospital. I had it, and I got better. And I will tell you that I had something that they gave me, a therapeutic, I guess they would call it. Some people could say it was a cure. But I was in for a short period of time, and I got better very fast, or I wouldn't be here tonight. And now they say I'm immune, whether it's 4 months or a lifetime. Nobody's been able to say that, but I'm immune. More and more people are getting better. We have a problem that's a worldwide problem. This is a worldwide problem. But I've been congratulated by the heads of many countries on what we've been able to do. If you take a look at what we've done in terms of goggles and masks and gowns and everything else, and in particular ventilators. We're now making ventilators all over the world, thousands and thousands a month, distributing them all over the world. It will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's going away.
Okay, former Vice President Biden.
Let's now dig
to you,
into,
how would you lead the country out of this crisis?
Okay, let's dig into some of those claims. I highlighted in blue the text we'll read through and talk about. Now, most of this COVID discussion from the debate is in here. There were a few sections that were really just a lot of finger pointing. I left those out. We don't need to go through finger pointing, right? We want to look at claims. So the first one, 2.2 million people modeled out were expected to die. Okay, now this is from memory, but I was watching it. I do remember the quote experts, whether that was Dr. Fauci or someone else, I don't remember, but the experts that the president brought in early in March, I was actually traveling at the time when I watched this stuff. We're talking about modeling scenarios of 2 million people dying. I don't remember if it was 2.2, but I do remember 2 million people. And that changed over time, of course. So I believe that is a true statement. It started out that the quote experts were saying it's going to be horrible. It's going to be horrible. 2 million people dying. Okay. By the way, life is super valuable. I don't want to degrade or give you the impression that I'm trying to disrespect life at all. I actually believe that every life matters, including unborn babies. And that might make some of you mad, but unborn babies have a right to life too. And I believe their lives matter. So I believe every life matters. Now, 2 million people modeled out of how many 300 something million people in the country is still less than 1%. And I'm just saying that to give you a point of reference, okay? Because one of the plagues, I want to say it was the bubonic plague, but I didn't write it down. I can't remember. One of the plagues, or Spanish flu or something like that. There was a plague in like the 18 or 1900s, I think. It took out like half of Europe. It was crazy. I mean, there's some huge, huge number of deaths in Europe, right? Or Black Plague or something. I don't know. Like, that's huge. Half, like that's 50%. We're talking less than 1% here was the model to start with, and has been even lower than that. So just to give you a context, because it's easy to get all riled up about people are dying. Yeah, so, you know, unfortunately, there's this evil called sickness in the world. I could spiritually go into that on another thing, but I'm trying to keep that out of it. But it's a spiritually brought thing in the world, and it aims to kill people. So there have been plagues in the past that have killed lots and lots of people. Even that 2.2 million people is far less than some of the worst plagues that we've ever seen, and that was modeled as like a worst case as far as I know. So I'm not saying that to devalue life at all. I'm just saying that to give you a frame of reference for where we started. And, you know, we've got a president. The president here was in the driver's seat, and I feel bad for him, right? Because he's having to make the decision. That's a hard decision. What do I do? 2.2 million people could die. You know, basically, he's in a point where he's like, what I do could affect whether they live or die. That's a hard place to be. That's a really hard place to be. But the fact is that whatever he does also will have impacts on people's lives, very real impacts, whether economic, but economic impacts actually lead to mortality impacts, lead to life and death. So when people prosper, they tend to live. When people don't prosper, they tend to fall into sickness or addiction or die earlier, have a worse life. So, you know, he's not in an easy spot. I just want you to remember that. And this was back in February, March. I do remember that. I watched, it was in March, I guess. I watched it myself on press conferences when I was traveling. I got kind of stranded during this COVID thing. Not traveling internationally, but, you know, domestically. And I watched these press conferences, you know, so this, I think that's real. We closed up the greatest economy in the world in order to fight this horrible disease that came from China. That's right. The president made the hard decision to close the economy, to basically keep only essential businesses open as an emergency measure, right? That was in March, I guess, late March or April. And our entire economy felt it. I mean, I can tell you, everything changed. I flew home during the early days of that. I was actually traveling out of Austin, Texas. And I remember, I've been through Austin a lot, and Austin's a busy airport usually. I remember walking into that airport, not a single person in the line for the check-in counter, not one person. I don't remember there was one other customer in the entire lobby, maybe one or two. It was a ghost town. It was weird, you know. But I say that to emphasize the president did make a very tough decision to shut down the economy to try to protect people. Remember, at that point, we had no data that we're aware of. I mean, this was a new thing even in China. So Whether China knew more about it or not, I don't know. I can't say that, but I believe the president when he says we didn't know that we didn't have that visibility. I don't think China gave us a heads up if they did know about it. So, we have no data, and he's in this difficult decision of what do I do? And he closed down the economy. So that's true. Closed up the greatest economy in the world. And we saw a lot of fallout from that. And he knew that would come. He's a businessman, right? And that's why he wanted to reopen it. He said the mortality rate is, well, he does, it's not blue, but worldwide pandemic, absolutely. It is worldwide. I don't think anybody disputes that. Mortality rate down 85%. I'm not sure what that metric is coming from. So I can't say that 85% is accurate necessarily, but the mortality rate is certainly down. If you compare it, the data that I walked through in part one showed that the rate of deaths being recorded as COVID, if you believe they're all really COVID, compared to the number of confirmed cases, that rate decreased substantially from like I want to say it was like 5.1% to 2.6% in 4 months. And actually, probably 85% is probably accurate because back in March and April, that mortality rate was way higher than 5%. I don't know what it was back then, but you could easily go compute it by finding out what the death count was and the number of confirmed cases on a given day. So look at at the middle of that first big spike and compute it there and see like that would have been the peak probably. So that probably is pretty accurate. Actually, the excess mortality rate is way down and much lower than almost any other country. Oh, I forgot to look up excess mortality rate. I'm not a doctor. I don't know what that means. Totally forgot to look it up. Anyways, you go look it up. You test that one. We have Operation Warp Speed, which is the military is going to distribute the vaccine. Well, I don't have a way to test that one. We'll see. We'll see. I believe him. I believe him when he says this, that he intends to use the military to distribute the vaccine. But what I suspect, because the president has been delegating to states, is he'll probably offer the choice to states to use that if he does. I mean, I suspect that, but I don't know. So apparently it's called Operation Warp Speed. And I have no problems with that. Military getting their cargo planes and filling it full of vaccine and shipping it to states. I have no problem with that. Personally, I don't want the vaccine myself. Whether you want the vaccine or not, that's a different story. But people do want it. Some people definitely want it. And so I can totally see getting it out that way. Now let's look at this next one. I got better very fast or I wouldn't be here tonight. Well, that's true. I mean, he got it early October, late September, I can't remember, but I mean, he was only in the hospital for a couple of days and he looked pretty darn good when he got out. He looks pretty darn good right now. Seems very energetic. In fact, I think he looked better than when he went in. He said, now they say I'm immune. So that is typically how these things work, right? So your body, when it overcomes an illness, leaves memory of that within your immune system, to make it very simple, so that when it sees it show up the next time, it can clobber it early before it gets a hold. Now, sometimes, like with influenza, those things can mutate, change, which makes the memory of that illness not work so well. We don't know yet whether coronavirus mutates rapidly, like influenza. So that's still an unknown thing. But everything I know about how immune systems work, I did take some immunology classes in college. Yeah, I would say he should be immune. Don't know for how long, like he said, but he should be. More and more people are getting better. The data does support that. The data does support that the mortality rate is down. People are recovering more. Fewer people, in terms of a percentage of confirmed cases, fewer people are dying. The number of people dying per day seems to be fairly stable and flat, even though the case count is going up. And there are these new therapies, whatever, like he took, I forget what it was called, but there are these new things that are helping people in the hospital. I'm sure doctors have learned to better treat people who are in critical stages with, especially with compromised, other conditions at play and stuff. They're learning as they go. So seems right that people are getting better. The data does suggest that. It will go away. And as I say, we're rounding the turn, rounding the corner, it's going away. That one, again, I'm trying to be objective and not partisan, not favor either one of these candidates, okay? That one, who knows? Got no way to test it. I can give you my spiritual opinions. I'm going to withhold that because that's not what this is about. Who knows? We will see. We will see. I do believe it will go away at some point. I don't know when. I don't know if we're, quote, rounding the turn, but all the data does suggest that things look way better now than they did back in March and February, and even through the summer. But even through the summer, it looked better from a death rate perspective than it did early in the year. So yeah, it does seem like things are getting better. When it will go away, I don't know. All right, let's look at the next clip. And what I'm doing, rather than switching back and forth like the debate does between President Trump and former VP Biden, I'm just going to stay all President Trump and then all President Biden, and then we'll go back and talk about the comparison of the two. So let's watch this clip.
Follow up with you, and because this is new information, you have said a vaccine is coming soon, within weeks now. Your own officials say it could take well into 2021 at the earliest for enough Americans to get vaccinated. And even then, they say the country will be wearing masks and distancing into 2022. Is your timeline realistic?
No, I think my timeline is going to be more accurate. I don't know that they're counting on the military the way I do, but we have our generals lined up, one in particular that's the head of logistics. And this is a very easy distribution for him. He's ready to go as soon as we have the vaccine. And we expect to have 100 million vials. As soon as we have the vaccine, he's ready to go.
Vice President Biden, your reaction?
All right, let's look at that one. He said, I think my timeline is going to be more accurate. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I don't discount it. I don't disbelieve him. We just don't know. That's his opinion. As soon as we have the vaccine, we expect to have 100 million vials. We'll see if that holds up. I don't have the information he has, but 100 million vials is a lot. I mean, that's a third of the population of America, almost a third. And I know a lot of people who will not take that vaccine, including me. I don't want it. And so seems like plenty for a first dose. That's a lot out the door, out of the gate. So we'll see. I don't know. This is all like talking about future plans, and you and I don't have visibility to that. So we will see. I don't see any reason to disbelieve it. Now let's look at this next clip.
Trump, your reaction, he says you have no plan.
We're going to have a dark winter at all. We're opening up our country. We've learned and studied and understand the disease, which we didn't at the beginning. When I closed and banned China from coming in heavily infected, and then ultimately Europe. But China was in January. Months later, he was saying I was xenophobic. I did it too soon. Now he's saying, oh, I should have, moved quicker. But he didn't move quicker. He was months behind me, many months behind me. And frankly, he ran the H1N1 swine flu, and it was a total disaster, far less lethal, but it was a total disaster. Had that had this kind of numbers, 700,000 people would be dead right now, but it was a far less lethal disease. Look, his own person who ran that for him, who, as you know, was his chief of staff, said it was catastrophic, it was horrible, we didn't know what we were doing. Now he comes up and he tells us how to do this. Also,
Okay, let's look at that.
everything that he said about the way.
Oops. So the president here had just responded to some comments from former VP Biden, which you will hear later, about being a dark winter, respecting in respect to the coronavirus thing. And here, President Trump is saying, I don't think we're going to have a dark winter at all. He's saying, I don't think it's going to be bad. He's basically countering and prophesying good. It's like, basically, I think we're going to move forward. I think this is going to be a good season for America. We're going to get through this. It's not going to be a dark winter. He says, we're opening up our country. That is true, but it is true in the context that the federal government has allowed the country to open for a long time, right? The federal government only had the guideline, even back initially, I think it was all really left up to the states, but the federal government, from a mandate standpoint, isn't requiring the country to be closed down. It's left up to the states at this point. So they are promoting opening up the country. That's a good thing for the economy, at least. And he said, we've learned and studied and understand the disease, which we didn't at the beginning. I would agree with that. I don't know. I have not followed all the medical studies, but come on, there's so much scrutiny and so much attention on this. Universities, pharmaceutical companies, all sorts of government labs, like everybody is researching this. Everybody's looking at this. So I would expect, excuse me, I want to sneeze there. I would expect that, yes, we have a much better understanding of this thing than we didn't in the beginning. And I can say for certain that from the standpoint of you and I think even the government, we have data now, and we didn't have data. It was a new thing. When you have a new thing that suddenly comes out of nowhere, you don't have data on it, right? Now we have data. We have 8-9 months of experience, so we understand it better. We walked through that data in part 1, right? Or at least some of it. I'm sure there's more out there than I found, but we do have that, and we didn't have it back in March. So then President says, and frankly, he ran the H1N1 swine flu. Now, I did not go dig up all the numbers around the swine flu, but I do remember, I was alive at the time, I do remember that. If I'm not mistaken, that was in the 2000s, 15 or so years ago, something like that, 2004 or 5, something like that. I do remember that, the swine flu, H1N1 thing. And I cannot substantiate the president's claims here, and I cannot refute them either. If you want to know, go back and do the research yourself. He is claiming that he's probably looking at the number of infections that happen for swine flu and then taking the mortality rate of COVID-19 and saying if those same number of infections had, if the same death rate that COVID-19 is seeing had applied to all those infections, we would have had a lot more people die. So that's not hard math to do if you want to go figure out what these swine flu infection numbers were. And I don't see why that would be wrong. So that's a number easily verifiable if you want to go look at it. I don't see any reason to doubt it. But again, as a number, we should verify it. So I'm not going to stand for or against it. I'm just going to say, you know, I can reason that might hold true. I just haven't verified it. All right, let's look at this next clip here.
Soon.
President Trump, your reaction?
I say over soon. I say we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does. He has the ability to lock himself up. I don't know. He's obviously made a lot of money someplace, but he has this thing about living in a basement. People can't do that. By the way, I, as the president, couldn't do that. I'd love to put myself in the basement or in a beautiful room in the White House and go away for a year and a half until it disappears. I can't do that. And Kirsten, every meeting I had, and I'd meet a lot of families, including Gold Star families and military families, every meeting I had, and I had to meet them. I had to. It would be horrible to have canceled everything. I said, you know, this is dangerous. And you catch it. And, you know, I caught it. I learned a lot. Great doctors, great hospitals. And now I recovered. 99.9 of young people recover. 99% of people recover. We have to recover. We can't close up our nation. We have to open our school, and we can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation.
And of course,
Okay, let's look at that. So the president's responding to former VP Biden at this point, saying he said it would be over soon. He said, I didn't say that. I say we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement. I'm not going to read the rest of it. Now, this is not data that we can test, but the truth is we got a problem, and we're learning to live while we work through the problem. Right? Would you agree with that? Okay. We have no choice. I would agree with that. This thing wasn't something we wanted, right? Nobody wanted this. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement. I agree with that. Now, this is just my opinion. I'm for reopening. You know, we can't all stay shut up and expect and hold up in our buildings and expect the economy to just be okay. Now, there are a lot of mid to high wage people who will be just fine doing that because they can work remotely anyways. It doesn't really change things for them or harm them, or those companies can do that. But for those whose jobs are in service industry, whose jobs are basically on the job, on the spot, and they're not critical businesses. You know, when those people get out of work, my opinion is, it will trickle up to the larger businesses. You know, they'll be able to afford to buy less from corporations, and those corporations will have to lay off some of the higher earning people, and then they'll be spending less money. I mean, we can't do that. It doesn't make sense. You're saying you know, I'm not saying you're saying this, but some people are arguing to continue locking down the economy. And President Trump is saying we can't do that. I personally agree with that. That's opinion. I think if you look at it from an economic standpoint, the impact of the economics on people, that makes sense. But again, it comes down to what you value. Do you value simply staying alive, even if your chance of death is very, very small, simply staying alive, or prospering? What do you value? All right, next one says, I caught it, I learned a lot, great doctors, great hospitals, and now I recovered. Well, yeah, he did just catch it. And I guess he did learn a lot. He seems to have. And yeah, I'm sure he had great doctors. He is the president, of course. So he's going to get the best medical care in the world. That's not a surprise. I'm not going to, of course, not everybody is going to get the medical care that the president is. Let's make no mistake. He recovered, praise God. I thank God that our president recovered, and not only recovered, he looks great. He seems energetic. I'm so glad for him. He says 99.9% or 99.9 of young people recover. Now that's a number we could test. So I haven't done it yet, but I have looked a while ago at the CDC data by age group. Okay, and I believe that's pretty accurate. As when you're talking the young population, we did look at some age-related population data. I mean, we saw that nationwide, I think the number was, the average across all the states was like 97% of all deaths are in people 45 and up. 97%. So between age 0, newborn, and 45, that leaves 3%, right? And it's going to be skewed more towards the higher end of that range, because this is, whatever reason, affects older people more. So I think that's accurate, actually. Again, I didn't go back to the specific CDC data, and I don't know what he's defining as young. I'm assuming it's like 20 and under, something like that. Maybe 30 and under, but I think if you look at infants, like newborns and toddlers and children under like 10 or whatever, I think that number probably is pretty accurate. But go test it. Go look it up. I did provide a link to age-related data, I believe, in the part 1 data sources slide. And then he says 99% of people recover. So this is an interesting one. Let's test this with what we saw in the data. Excuse me, mouth is getting dry. I like tea a lot. Oh, and ginger tea is great. 99% of people recover. Now, in part 1, when we looked at the data, what was the recovery or the death rate? Do you remember? The death rate. I'll give you help. I think it was down to 2.6%, as a function of the number of recorded deaths labeled as COVID divided by the number of confirmed cases labeled COVID. So that would be 230,000 deaths roughly today divided by almost 9 million cases. It was 8.658, I think, in the data, with 220 something thousand deaths as of October 22nd, or 230,000. I can't remember exactly where it was. So that death number divided by the case number. Now, I think it was like 2.6%. So by that number, this claim would appear to be incorrect. However, if remember, we looked at serological studies. So the true death rate needs to account for all people as best you can, all people, not just the ones you know had it, right? But all people, because there are people we didn't test that had it. So they need to be included in that statistic too. That's what serological studies do. So if we use that number, which was take the current number of confirmed cases and multiply by 3.78, that ended up being more like 32, 33 million. But the death rate number wouldn't change, because unless there's people dying that you don't know about with COVID, that number is pretty stable. There may be a few of those onesies and twosies here, but I'm assuming most people, like most people who die, if it was because of COVID, would have had some sort of symptoms that would lead to at least an autopsy if they weren't hospitalized, something like that, and it would be discovered at least after the fact that they have the disease. So I actually think that's probably an accurate number based on the serological studies, that the true death rate would be far lower than 2.6%, accounting for everybody who's been exposed and never even knew it, maybe never got tested. I think so. And then he said 99% of people recover. We just talked about that. We have to recover. We can't close up our nation. We have to open our schools, and we can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little opinion here. This is my opinion. So right here, we are seeing President Trump's stance on this. Former VP Biden will talk a lot about the president having a plan or not. You know, I would challenge him as to what his detailed plan is. But here we see what I believe is the president's plan. We've seen him lay out. We're helping get a vaccine out as best we can, getting it expedited, thinking about distribution of it once it's available. By the way, a vaccine is not the silver bullet, in my opinion, but many people want it. So helping to do that. And he's also of the opinion, right here, these were his own words, we can't close up our nation. We have to recover. We can't close up our nation. We have to open our schools. We can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation. On that point, I agree with him. I agree with him, and I applaud him for taking that stance. From the very start, it bothered me that we were closing up our economy, and I understand why the president did that temporarily, early in the year, and I applauded his courage and decision to do that, even though I didn't want to. I understand he's a president with lies hanging in the balance, but it was also a very short-lived thing. He didn't want it to be long, right? Because he's a businessman, he understands the implications to the economy. From the very start, I've been very, very worried about how our economy would handle that, especially if it's prolonged. And I do believe, again, I believe there's spiritual stuff going on behind this that I won't get into, but you take that into account, and you take into account real economics, that if we do close up our nation, we're not going to have a nation. You know, if we don't have a nation that's running full steam and the greatest economy in the world, we will be overtaken in that respect by another nation. You can probably guess what nation that is. China. China, I do believe, wants to be number one. I can't blame them for wanting to be number one. I mean, but there's more to it than that, let's just say, in my opinion. So I don't want China to be number one. I want us to be number one, don't you? And if we close up our nation, I mean, come on, we can't stay number one. Plus, closing up our nation, when you look at what it has done, we'll look at this a little bit in more detail later. When you look at what it has done, just all the stimulus checks it had to be issued. I'm not arguing against them as bad things. Like, you know, certainly some people need help, right? And I'm all for the government trying to help in a temporary way when people need it because of actions the government itself has taken. But wow, our debt, the country's debt exploded. Now, some of that honestly was politicking. I do remember the initial stimulus bill going from like, I don't remember what it was at first, but it was like, I want to say it was like 1.2 billion, and then ended up or 1.2 trillion, ended up being 4 trillion or something like that. That's crazy. Trillion with a T, trillion dollars, as if it's chump change. It's not chump change. I think our GDP is, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around 18 or 20 trillion. Our entire output for a year, you know, and boom, just cut a check for it. No, we can't do that. We can't do that. So now I'm getting off my opinion horse, right? This isn't supposed to be me giving you opinion. I'm just saying that this is right here. I believe that what you're looking at is President Trump's stance on dealing with this virus as we stamp it out. Like, as we learn to not live with it, but live while we defeat it. And I agree with that stance. So let's look at this next clip.
Excuse me, I take full responsibility. It's not my fault that it came here. It's China's fault. And you know what? It's not Joe's fault that it came here either. It's China's fault. They kept it from going into the rest of China for the most part, but they didn't keep it from coming out to the world, including Europe and ourselves.
Vice President Biden.
All right.
The fact is that
Okay, so here the president is responding to former VP Biden, who accused him of not taking responsibility. Honestly, this is my opinion. I don't know what the heck former VP Biden, what leg he's standing on to say that. Excuse me, the president did not want this virus. The president did not bring it here. He says, I take full responsibility, and I commend him for saying that, but I don't think he had to. But he did take authority over it and responsibility in terms of making decisive actions for our nation, right? He did close the borders to China and then Europe later. He did not really, I don't remember the mandate, but basically shut the country down temporarily. It was really state-run thing, state choices, but it was the federal government that recommended it for sure. I mean, he did take the leadership in that, in the response to this thing, and I applaud him for that leadership. I agree with him when he said, it's not my fault it came here. It is not his fault. It is not his fault. And it honestly makes me a little sick. I'm a little angry, but I forgive former VP Biden when he accuses President Trump of being responsible for this virus. That is ludicrous. It is ludicrous. President Trump did not make this virus. He did not bring it here. I don't believe that for a second. And that's not nice. That's just not nice to even imply and say. I'm sorry. President Trump said it's China's fault. I can't say if it's China's fault. in terms of intentionality or not. It certainly came from China, it sounds like. But the president certainly has more intel than I do as to what is China's motivations, and I personally wouldn't put it past China from doing that because of what I do believe is going on spiritually. And don't get me wrong, I love China. I love Chinese people. I have many, many, many Chinese friends. And I will be gathering with a bunch of them tomorrow night. So nothing about China or Chinese people in particular from my standpoint. But they, they do run as a communist nation. And well, I've read some things about communism. I actually had the blessing to actually travel to Russia when it was still communist. It was a USSR at the time, so just got a very, very little glimpse into that. The people were awesome there. People were awesome, but okay, I'm going off on a tangent. Let's get back focused. What I'm saying is it's not President Trump's fault. I support him in that. If you're going to place fault, place it on China, because for sure they didn't keep their people. They didn't keep people from leaving China when they knew that. I think that's pretty clear, right? Whether they intentionally released the virus or not, I don't know. But they didn't keep people from leaving China, and they probably should have. So he says, and you know what? It's not Joe's fault that it came here either. I applaud him for that. That's nice. It's true. It's not Joe Biden's fault. It's not. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. None of us wanted this thing to come here. Or if you did want it to come here, well, there's a problem, right? Like that's, well, anyways, maybe you're working for somebody else. But I don't think any of us citizens wanted this thing to come here. So it's really disrespectful to accuse the president in the first place of being responsible for it. And that's it. That's that. Again, that's not data, but I got to say that. Next one.
I think we have to respond, if I might.
Please, and then I have a follow-up.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Look, all he does is talk about shutdowns, but forget about him. His Democrat governors, Cuomo in New York, you look at what's going on in California, you look at Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Democrats all, they're shut down so tight, and they're dying. They're dying. And he supports all these people. All he talks about is shutdowns. No, we're not going to shut down, and we have to open our schools. And it's like, as an example, I have a young son. He also tested positive. By the time I spoke to the doctor the second time, he was fine. It just went away. Young people, I guess it's their immune system.
Let me follow up with
All right. Let's
you,
now
President Trump.
look at that. So he said his Democrat governors, Cuomo in New York, look at what's going on in California, you look at Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Democrats all, they're shut down so tight and they're dying. He supports all these people, and he talks about all he talks about is shutdowns. No, we're not going to shut down, and we have to open our schools. All right, let me address this kind of in reverse order. So we are going to, I don't know what former VP Biden is out there saying all the time about shutting down or not, but I know what he says in this debate and what I've heard from some other interchanges in the past, some other statements he's made on shutting down, wearing masks, and in schools. I don't know that it's fair to say all he talks about is shutdowns. I need to be fair here. I don't know if that's really fair or accurate. Maybe that's an exaggeration. But again, I don't spend all my time watching former VP Biden, what he's saying, or President Trump for that matter. I don't spend all my time watching him either. No, we're not going to shut down. Good. That's President Trump's stance, and we have to open our schools. That's his stance. So we'll see later where former VP Biden stands a little bit on some of these issues, although it wasn't super clear to me on the shutdown thing. Now, let's talk about these earlier statements. Democratic governors, Cuomo in New York, look at what's going on in California, look at Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Democrats all, they're shut down so tight, they're dying. I'm not in any of those states. I'm in Oregon. Oregon was a Democratic state last year, or last presidential election, last time I checked. And I will tell you, I am not happy with how Oregon has handled this. I am not happy with Governor Brown's stances and some of her statements and attitudes on this. I am not in agreement and not happy. I am not happy when I look around, and I have seen many businesses close. I've seen many businesses shut down, move out, and some of that may be just a reflection of them having time to reevaluate the small businesses, whether they wanted to continue or not, or shift what they do. But some of it's not. You know, some of it, like especially the restaurant and some of those retail and service industries, you know, the clientele base just isn't there anymore because of this. And you look at cafes. I mean, I was in part one, I was talking about my favorite cafe around the corner that has the best scones. These scones are great. And used to be able to go in there and meet a friend for coffee and sit down and chat or do some work. Can't do that because they're choosing to not allow it. And I think they're choosing to not allow it because the state mandates are pretty tight about what they would have to do to allow it, as my understanding. I could be wrong. There are a few cafes that do allow it. Of course, they mark off, you know, tables for distancing and everything. Anyways, the little coffee shops aren't that big in the first place. They don't have a lot of room. So the fact is that, you know, I'm just not happy with the way Oregon has handled this. And it is a Democratic state too, but I'm not blaming that on the Democrats. I don't think this should be a Democratic or Republican thing at all. It should be about doing the right thing for the people and looking at the data and being really honest and really transparent about what you're doing and why. And I don't believe we've had that in Oregon. I'll just say that. Now, in California, I know people down there. I have friends down there. I haven't been down there since this all started. I was down there right before it started. And I hear it's pretty bad. There's some pretty awful things going on in California, and specifically enforcement of rules selectively, as I understand it, that are possibly even infringing upon religious liberties, worship, freedom to worship and stuff. But there's some bad stuff going on in California. Okay, from a leadership authority standpoint, from what I hear. Again, I don't live there. It's from what I hear. But there's great people in California. It's not the people. It's who's in charge, right? And it's all about who's in charge. It's not condemning Californians. I have, you know, there's great people, many friends down in California. There's awesome people there. And I feel for them. I feel for them. I don't know what the economy is like in LA and in San Francisco and stuff. President Trump talks about New York being a ghost town. I can tell you, my own town, it still kind of feels like a ghost town. It's not the same. It's not. I mean, we've had the the riot stuff, which is a whole another discussion, but it's not the same as it used to be. And I'm not expecting that it would ever be actually the same, because I believe in the philosophy that God goes from glory to glory. So I believe in better. But the problem is that we're a community and there's no people. When people aren't out, that's a problem, because we're people. We're made to be in community. We're made to do things together. We're made to celebrate together. We're made to sing together and to laugh together and to dance together. We're made to go shopping together. We're made to go bike riding together and all sorts of stuff. But people aren't doing that as much. Now, people are getting a little frustrated where I live, as I have been, of this whole mask mandate, and more people are ditching them. More and more people are saying, enough, I'm just going to go do it. I'm going to go be with people, right? And I love that. But the government's perspective in all this has been tighten. There's even specific things, like it may have expired right now, but I believe there was an order that the state government put in, which would be under the governor here, that prevented prescription of hydroxychloroquine for COVID-19 prevention, I think, basically, for treatment outside of, as far as I understand it, emergency contacts. So I think that you could get it if you were in a hospital, in an ICU, they could get it for you. And their justification was to keep it available for people, so it was available. But we know that this is a plentiful drug. There's many generic forms of it. It's been around for a long time. I was offered it once for malaria prevention, and normal mainline doctors were prevented from prescribing it. Except where there were very specific conditions, and only for COVID. So they could prescribe it if you were going to go travel somewhere where there was malaria, which basically you can't do because countries shut down their borders, close their borders. But I'm going off on a tangent. All I'm trying to say is that I don't think it's fair to point at Democrat, and Republican. We're going to look at a little bit of that later after we go through former VP Biden's statements. I don't think that's really fair. Let's not make this about Democratic and Republican if we can help it. Really, it's about who's doing what and is it good for the people? Are they honoring and respecting the people? And what's it doing for the people? I don't know what's happening to the North Carolina economy. I don't know what's happening to the Pennsylvania economy or the California economy. I know what's happening where I live and where family lives, and that's about it. But I do hear about some of what's happening in terms of the imposition of enforcement of very strict mandates and such in some states, California being the most prominent of those. Okay. All right, let's look at this one.
Up with you, President Trump. You've demanded schools open in person and insist they can do it safely. But just yesterday, Boston became the latest city to move its public school system entirely online after a coronavirus spike. What is your message to parents who worry that sending their children to school will endanger not only their kids, but also their teachers and families?
I want to open the schools. The transmittal rate to the teachers is very small, but I want to open the schools. We have to open our country. We're not going to have a country. You can't do this. We can't keep this country closed. This is a massive country with a massive economy. People are losing their jobs. They're committing suicide. There's depression, alcohol, drugs at a level that nobody's ever seen before. There's abuse, tremendous abuse. We have to open our country. You know, I've said it often. The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself.
Vice
And that's
President.
what's happening. And he wants to close down. He'll close down the country if one person in our massive bureaucracy says we should close it down.
Vice President Biden, you're
Okay, let's look at that. So here, this is important for us to remember as we're voting, right? Because really what we're trying to discern here is not Republican or Democrat, red or blue. That's not what it's about. What are their stances? What are they gonna saying? How are they saying they're gonna act in wielding their authority if they're elected? And President Trump says, I want to open the schools. He claims the transmittal rate to teachers is very small. I have not researched that. So love it. If you want to go research that and send me some studies that have been done or something, that would be great. But what we do know is that the impact of COVID in young people is very small in terms of being a negative impact, mortality, et cetera. Very small. That is supported by data. It says, but I want to open the schools. We have to open our country. We're not going to have a country. I think he means if we don't open our country. You can't do this. We can't keep this country closed. This is a massive country with a massive economy. People are losing their jobs. They're committing suicide. There's depression, alcohol, drugs at a level that nobody's ever seen before. There's abuse, tremendous abuse. We have to open our country. I've said it often, the cure cannot be worse than the problem itself, and that's what's happening. So some of these claims, I can't speak to proving one way or another, but I can offer you my thoughts and encourage you to go think about what you believe. I do agree that we can't keep this country closed and we need to open our schools. So I agree with the president in that sense, but that's just my opinion, right? That's not data. People are losing their jobs. So that is something that there is data behind, and I haven't gone and pulled it, and we can test. So, you know, the jobless, the unemployment rates have gone down a bit, but I haven't tracked them recently. They're not anywhere near what they were before all this started, which was, I think, 2 or 3%, something really low. They're committing suicide. So again, I don't know, but I have actually heard of some cases where this may be true. In fact, there was one, you know, assuming it's legitimate, it seemed legitimate, going around Facebook, where or YouTube, where a man was telling of his son who just one day, without them realizing it, took his own life. Young son, I think like 12 years old or something, because of the effect all of this was having on his psyche, with not being able to see friends and anyways, a whole lot of stuff. But the thing is that when we lock ourselves up away from people, it has an impact. I was longing to get around people again after a month. And when I finally did, I was so grateful, because we're not made to be isolated. And when we are isolated, we die, because we die like spiritually, mentally, without the, we lose hope. We lose perspective. We lose all sorts of stuff. We're not made to be isolated. And then there's the whole economic side of that. So there's, if you've lost your job, that's a really hard place to be in. You know, if you lost your job, but you found another one, you're making a lot less. It's a really hard place to be in. And it can be hard for people to wrestle with that and stay positive. And if you don't stay positive, then there's an opening for depression. And, depression just wants to kill you, to be honest. It just wants to kill you. Same with addiction and drugs. Those things just lead to bad stuff and even death. And those are things that do tend to increase when times are tough. I can say in my own area, from what I understand, crime rates have gone way up since this all started. When everything was humming along and everything's a lot of prosperity, there was less crime. But now when people lose hope, you know, they also lose their sense sometimes. The abuse thing I can't speak to, but I have heard of, you know, that being locked at home, having to work from home, and already strained relationships and marriages has caused some problems for some couples and some people and kids. So, you know, you're putting additional stress and additional burden on people when they can't be around others, or at least others outside of their own immediate family right there, and they're locked away with them. And then, you know, some people thrive in that, some people draw closer together, and that's great. But some people aren't walking in a healthy relationship and don't know how to draw closer together and end up becoming even more unhealthy in that context, and things get worse. So yeah, I can see how that could be true. That's all. I can't prove any of those. You could probably go research on this. There probably have been some studies on depression, suicide rate, all that stuff. But I haven't done it. I'm just offering you my opinion and what I've heard from other people and trying to give you a context in which, you know, if you haven't thought about it that way, you might be able to think about it that way. All right, let's watch this one.
By the way, I will say this. If you go and look at what's happened to New York, it's a ghost town. It's a ghost town. And when you talk about plexiglass, these are restaurants that are dying. These are businesses with no money. Putting up plexiglass is unbelievably expensive, and it's not the answer. I mean, you're going to sit there in a cubicle wrapped around with plastic. These are businesses that are dying, Joe. You can't do that to people. You just can't. Take a look at New York and what's happened to my wonderful city for so many years. I loved it. It was vibrant. It's dying. Everyone's leaving New York.
Take a look at what New York.
Okay, let's look at that. So the president says these are businesses with no money, right? Talking about restaurants. And so we will actually see, we're almost through the statements from President Trump. And when we get into former VP Biden's statements, we will see his stance on this. And President Trump is hitting home at it here, because you'll see that former VP Biden, a lot of his thinking is require, you know, things like this plexiglass and stuff. He even says some of it. And President Trump is correctly, in my opinion, saying that stuff's really expensive. It's really expensive, and it sucks. You know, forgive me if I don't think that's a curse word or anything, but it stinks. It stinks to be sitting in a little plastic bubble. It does. It stinks when I go to the grocery and I have to look at the cashier through plexiglass and, you know, hand an item. You know, I was in CVS yesterday. Hand the item through a little hole in the plexiglass, like banks used to be back in the day. Remember? I mean, really? That's not how I want to live. And we think, oh, it's just a temporary solution, but is it? Is it? What's it doing to our psyche as we begin to accept these things? Once we accept them, are we going to be so eager to push them away? Just something to think about. So the president right here is getting at, basically, to me, the way I hear this is saying that former VP Biden's stance on how he wants to address this is costing businesses a lot of money, or somebody a lot of money, and creating the kind of environment that we don't want to become normal for us. We don't want to at some point come to accept, right? It's not good. It's not human. It's I don't really know how else to say it, and he's lamenting over his own city of New York, which I can relate to, because I lament like that over my own city. My own city was incredibly vibrant. It was a popular tourist destination. In fact, there were still some tourists coming in over the summer, but not anywhere near the tourist volume that it was before. And I mean, it used to be a foodie haven, a foodie destination. I have no idea what's going to happen to it in that respect now. If those restaurants can't survive, if people give up on creating food businesses because now you can't seat people, you can't bring in that additional revenue, and everything's takeout, it completely changes your culinary and dining experience. I don't know if my city will stay a foodie destination. I hope it does. I pray it does. But yeah, the response of shutting everything down has a cost. It has an impact. And we see President Trump here, I think, saying, we can't do that. We can't do that. The cost is too great. And I love what he said in the past clip. 1 minute, I'm going to quote that for you. He said, the cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. And that's what's happening. I love that. I agree. The cure can't be worse than the problem. So just my opinion here. I hope that helps you understand what I think the president is getting at. But again, this isn't data that we can just go test. Let's look at I think this is the last clip of President Trump here.
President, New York has lost more than 40,000 people, 11,000 people in nursing homes.
President Trump, what
when
about...
you say spike, take a look at what's happening in Pennsylvania, where they've had it closed. Take a look at what's happening with your friend in Michigan, where her husband's the only one allowed to do anything. It's been like a prison. Now it was just ruled unconstitutional. Take a look at North Carolina. They're having spikes, and they've been closed, and they're getting killed financially. We can't let that happen, Joe. You can't let that happen. We have to open up. And we understand the disease. We have to protect our seniors. We have to protect our elderly. We have to protect especially our seniors with heart problems and diabetes problems. And we will protect them. We have the best testing in the world by far. That's why we have so many cases.
Let me follow up.
All right, let's look at this. This is the last one, I think. So there's some gems in here, right? New York has lost more than 40,000 people, 11,000 in nursing homes. So that is testable. I don't recall the specific number of deaths in New York, but I believe this. I think it's accurate because New York is and has for I think the entire time I've been tracking these numbers, the number one state in terms of COVID deaths, the number one since June. New York has been the number one. The 11,000 people in nursing homes, I don't know the exact number, but he probably knows what he's talking about. So you could probably go research that. I haven't verified that, but it does seem reasonable. And we know from CDC data that New York's rate of death in the 65 and over population was pretty high. I don't remember the exact percentage, but it was somewhere, north of 70%, probably, I'm guessing 76, 77, 80%. I mean, we know the average across all the states was 79%. So that would certainly be in line with it. I mean, if you had said like 39,000 people in nursing homes of the 40,000, well, that would be probably not realistic, but 11,000 would certainly fit within that statistic of the percentage of people over 65, or percentage of deaths that were in the over 65 age range. Now, he says, when you say spike, take a look what's happening in Pennsylvania, where they've had it closed. I don't know what's going on in Pennsylvania. Take a look at what's happening to your friend in Michigan. I don't need to, I don't know what the fight was there. I haven't tracked that court case, but you could probably go search it and figure out. It sounds like that's something you can test, right? There was a court case ruled unconstitutional. So if he's not telling the truth, you would be able to test it. Just go research it if you care. Take a look at North Carolina having spikes, and they've been closed, have been getting killed financially. I don't know, honestly. I don't know. I haven't been looking at North Carolina. All I can tell you is that I do believe my own state's been getting hurt financially. I do believe it's been laying off workers from the state government and public positions. I do believe that tax revenues are going to be down. I do believe that businesses have been hurting in this state. It's been hard. It's been hard. And the president says, we can't let that happen, Joe. You can't let that happen. We have to open up. I agree with him. I agree. We have to open up. And this is a part I want us to focus on. This is a part I really think is important as we vote. So this next part speaks into President Trump's stance in a way we haven't seen yet on COVID. He says, we understand the disease. We have to protect our seniors. We have to protect our elderly. We have to protect, especially our seniors with heart problems and diabetes problems, and we will protect. So he's very clearly saying here, he understands these people are at higher risk, and we need a way, whatever we do, we owe it to them to figure out how to try to treat them with a little more protection, at least if they want it, right? Now, what we have to be careful about is that we don't dictate what that protection looks like. Because the first place a lot of people's minds go is that means lockdown, that means shutdown, that means everyone has to wear a mask. Does it? Does it? Are you telling me we cannot allow people to not wear masks so that if this thing is spreading, that a herd immunity is developed quickly, while during that period doing the best we can to advise people and enable people who are at risk to shelter in place or be protected, special hours or sections at stores or whatever, while this country builds herd immunity? Are you telling me that that's not a possible solution? That the only solution is everybody has to wear masks all the time and everybody has to shut down, and we got to start opening our minds to thinking differently. I don't know the answer. I just want to see us have a discussion about it. That's all. But here we see the president acknowledging there's a segment of the population we have to be more conscious of and protect. Just let's not let our minds run to defining what that protection looks like. Let's discuss it. And then he goes on to say, we have the best testing in the world by far. That's why we have so many cases. I think I'd agree. Like the testing capacity has been built out pretty widely. People are getting tests back pretty rapidly now, I think. And we're doing a whole lot of tests every day. So I don't know if there are any other countries doing it at that scale yet or not. But I think it's fair to say that our testing is probably pretty world class. Wow. All right, this has gone quite a while. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. Hopefully you're finding it useful. Now we're going to go into former VP Joe Biden, and we'll go through his stuff, and then we're done. So I need to drink first. Sorry. Talking dries my mouth out. Again, the transcript here came from rev.com, and we've just gone through all of the President Trump extracts that I wanted to cover. And now let's look at all of what seem to be relevant statements from former VP Joe Biden. First one here.
Okay, former Vice President Biden, to you, how would you lead the country out of this crisis? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
220,000 Americans dead. If you hear nothing else I say tonight, hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially, anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. We're in a situation where there are 1,000 deaths a day now, 1,000 deaths a day, and there are over 70,000 new cases per day. Compared to what's going on in Europe, as the New England Medical Journal said, they're starting from a very low rate. We're starting from a very high rate. The expectation is we'll have another 200,000 Americans dead between now and the end of the year. If we just wore these masks, the president's own advisors have told him, we could save 100,000 lives. And we're in a circumstance where the president thus far and still has no plan, no comprehensive plan. What I would do is make sure we have everyone encouraged to wear a mask all the time. I would make sure we move in the direction of rapid testing, investing in rapid testing. I would make sure that we set up national standards as to how to open up schools and open up businesses so they can be safe and give them the wherewithal, the financial resources to be able to do that. We're in a situation now where the New England Medical Journal, one of the most serious journals in the whole world, said for the first time ever that the way this president has responded to this crisis has been absolutely tragic. And so, folks, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
All right, let's dig in here. I need to drink again. Former VP Biden says 220,000 Americans died. Yeah, so that's an accurate number over the course of the last, well, since March-ish, so 10 months or so, I guess. Yeah. Anyone who is responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially. Anyone is responsible for that many deaths should not remain as president of the United States of America. Okay. Well, these are numbers that we can go test, but let's look at this. Former VP Biden wanted the president to take control, which assumes he did not take control. I would argue, as a citizen of this country, having been in this country the entire time, the president did take control. He shut the borders down early. He basically brought around a short-term temporary countrywide shutdown, except for non-essential businesses. He addressed some crises in terms of lack of ventilators and some other things. He's seemingly been working with pharmaceutical companies, private business to try to accelerate vaccine and drug testing, as far as I understand. He's done what I believe he should have done personally. Now, there's a word in there named control, the word control. I guess it depends on what you mean by control, taking control. So I'm going to give you an opinion here. You can do what you want with it. I've already told you I think there's a big spiritual thing going on behind all of this stuff. And I think one of the motivations is to take control away from you and me, the citizens, and give it to government where it's in the hands of a few. So I'm not saying that's intentionally what former VP Biden is saying here, but it bothers me that he's talking about taking control and accusing the president for not having, because the president, in my opinion, and I'll be honest, I didn't vote for President Trump in the last presidential election. Okay, there, I just opened the kimono in that sense. I didn't vote for him, but I'm a fan of him now. And in my opinion, he did a great job. He did a great job. I can't imagine being in his shoes when all this went down. He did a great job, in my opinion. So he was accused of not taking control. You do with it what you want. But then the former VP says, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially. So he's accusing the president of not saying that he doesn't take responsibility. So does that mean that former VP Biden wanted the president to say he takes no responsibility, that that's what he should have done? Because he's been accusing him of being responsible and demanding responsibility. So I'm a little confused by that second sentence. I honestly don't know what he means there. Anyone is responsible for that many deaths should not remain as president of the United States of America. Now, there's a little righteous anger coming here. Now, I forgive him. I'm sure he's a nice man. But that was inappropriate. That was rude. That was mean. That was evil. That was an evil statement. The president of the United States is not responsible for the deaths that occurred. He did what he could. He did what he believed was appropriate. He tried to do something. You cannot put the deaths of those 220,000 people on the head of the president of the United States for this. The president of the United States did not cause this virus to come to our country. I don't think the former VP's accusing him of that, right? I don't believe the president brought this virus to our country. So you cannot assign responsibility for the deaths of these people to the president. That is evil, it is malicious, it is wrong. I'm sorry, it is wrong. So that's opinion, but come on, it is wrong. That's mean. Here's a man who's our president in office in a situation nobody would ever, who's in their right mind, probably would ever want to be in, having to wrestle with, what do you do? What path is right? People's lives are hanging in the balance, and the economy of the biggest, the greatest country in the world in terms of economic power is hanging in the balance, both of them. And you do one thing on one side and it, you know, it's like this. What do you do? Would you want to be in that position? I wouldn't be. I wouldn't want to be. But I commend the president for what he did. I commend the president for his calm during the whole situation, for exuding, you know, the appearance of peace and calmness, and trying to help people to stay in a calm mindset so people didn't freak out, stay cool and collected, and to make some very tough choices. So I think it's very unfair very unfair and very wrong for the former VP to accuse President Trump for killing people. And that's exactly what he did. He said he's responsible for that many deaths. He accused President Trump of killing people, basically, because if he's responsible, then the deaths are on his head. And that's not fair. That's not right. Okay. I just have to say that. Okay. Now, if that didn't offend you, and I hope not, because I mean, it's like, that's just human kindness, right? We're in a situation where there are 1,000 deaths a day now, says President or former VP Biden. That's a number we can test right there. He says 1,000 deaths a day. Wrong. That is blatantly wrong. We looked at the data before. Look at those 7-day moving averages. You can't look at one single day. Yeah, there may have been over 1,000 in one single day, but that doesn't make it a 1,000 every day. You look at the 7-day averages, and we're in the 800 range right now. When I took this data a day or two, a couple days ago, we're in the 800 something range. We're below the level of August or April 2nd, which was 860 something. So that is just blatantly wrong. That says that he doesn't actually know the data. And he's just trying to throw something out there to make the president look bad. And he doesn't stop there. He said, I've got it in blue, but then look, it says 1,000 deaths a day, and there are over 70,000 new cases per day. Actually, I think there's more than that. I think there's more new cases than that per day. So I just challenge you. You go test those numbers. Look back at part 1. Does the former VP even know what he's talking about? Does he even have his numbers right? And again, I'm not trying to be partisan or not. I want fair, honest, and truthful debate and discussion. And that is, well, those numbers don't look right. Yeah, they're over 70,000, but why wouldn't he say what they are, you know, if they're more? So anyways, what does new cases matter per day anyways, though? It's the death count that matters. What's happening to that? And that rate has been going down, but we don't see him saying that. President Trump has been saying that, but former VP Biden is not saying that. The last part of the statement, we're starting at a very high rate of what? Compared to what's going on in Europe, they're starting from a very low rate of what? I don't know. I haven't read that. Whatever an EMJ. Actually, he got that wrong too. I think he's talking about NEJM, New England Journal of Medicine. I could be wrong. Maybe there is a New England Medical Journal, but there used to be at least a New England Journal of Medicine, I believe, because I used to read it. I used to have a subscription to it because it's pre-med. I think this probably was talking about. So right there, 1,000 deaths a day, wrong. Over 70,000 new cases per day. That might be right in that it's over, but it's probably a little bit low, actually, demonstrating he might not actually know the data, which is a big thing given that this is a big situation for us, right? And then, like, if he did get the name of the medical journal wrong, that's 3 things in one statement that are suspect. That's a problem for me. I'm not trying to pick at the former VP. I'm just telling you, this is what he says. And I do have a problem with that first statement about the deaths being on the head of the president. Now, then he says, we'll have another 200,000 Americans dead between now and the end of the year. That's easy. That's easy. So if you look back at what we covered in part 1 and let's just compare that. Before we do that, let's compare that to what he said seconds earlier. He said 1,000 deaths a day. Okay, this debate happened, I believe it was October 20th, if I remember correctly. Let's just say it was October 20th. That'll make it easier. That means we have 11 more days in October, 10 more days in October, and we have 30 days in November and 31 days in December. So that means we have 71 days from the time that was said until the end of the year. And he's saying 200,000 Americans dead during that period of time. If there's 1,000 deaths, if there were 1,000 deaths per day, and there haven't been on the average 1,000 deaths per day in a while, if there were though, then by the end of the year, we'd only have 71,000 deaths. And I don't want to say only, like every death matters, but I'm just saying, like, we're looking at numbers here. That would be 71,000 deaths, not 200,000. Where the heck is he getting 200,000 from? Even his own math of 1,000 deaths a day doesn't add up to that. He'd have to triple that to 3,000 a day for that to be correct. He'd have to triple it. And we haven't been there. We went through a whole summer with a spike, and we haven't been there. We haven't been triple. I mean, come on, like, do you see this? This is a problem. It's just wrong. So it's either blatantly wrong, like intentionally wrong, which would mean it's an attempt at manipulation of you and me and invoking fear. It's either that, or it's he just has no clue. One or the other. But both are problems. That data is just wrong. Now, if we just wore these masks, the president's own advisors told him we could save 100,000 lives. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know what the heck he's talking about. I haven't researched it. Go research it. I don't know. 100,000, does that come out of the 200,000 that are supposed to die before the end of the year? What is he talking about? I don't know. All I can say is in the last 4 months, I've been tracking the data. How much has it gone up? Let's see. I think maybe it's gone up. I want to say it's just under 100,000 since I began tracking the data. Maybe a little bit more, but not much more. That's for sure. I think it's a little bit under 100,000 in 4 months since June. And that's with a spike in the middle of it, a spike of cases and the deaths going up a little bit too. So where are these 100,000 lives coming from? I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what he's talking about. Sure, he's got an explanation. Go read it. Hopefully it's got it on his website, got data supporting it. I don't know. We're in a circumstance where the president thus far still has no plan, no comprehensive plan. I'm trying to be very impartial here. And, you know, it's fair to challenge one another for plans. Fine. We've read the president's statements so far that they give us an idea for how he stands on it. Does he have a written plan that says we're going to do this, and this, and that this is a time frame and metrics and milestones in between? I haven't heard of one. I don't really think we need one. I'm sure they've got plenty of small plans in place for all sorts of contingencies, CDC with their own stuff and all this, you know, for the president to have this is my plan with my, you know, I got my program managers running it, we got our milestones and everything. I don't personally feel like we need that, but I don't know that he does or not. I don't know. I can't say. Maybe he doesn't. Let's just be fair. Maybe he doesn't. But what I would challenge is, where is that from former VP Biden? You're going to accuse the president of not having a plan. Give a detailed written plan with milestones, phases, what's going to be done, detail, like supported by data. Give that. Don't just talk about stuff. Give the plan, because a plan isn't just talk. A plan is steps laid out, leading to an intended purpose. There's a vision statement for where you're going in the plan, where you're trying to get to. So if the former VP is going to accuse the president of having no plan, I hope he's got one. I haven't looked on his website yet. I should go do that. I should go look on his website and see, Mr. Former VP, where's your plan? What does it say? Is that actually a plan, or is it just a bunch of statements about what you will support and won't? Because they're different. Okay. He promises a comprehensive plan, but he says no comprehensive plan, but he promises that he will have a plan. So this last one, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan. Well, I would say right now, if he doesn't already have that plan, he's already failed. He's running for position of the president of the United States. He needs to have something tangible, so it's not all talk. You know, if the president has no plan, it shouldn't be very hard for him to one-up him and put something together if it's really, if it's really that important. So I would hope that he has something, again, actually tangible, milestones, phases that you can track and you can tell whether he's on plan or off plan, meeting his targets or not, and where exactly he's going with this. And let's see that on his website. Maybe it's there. I don't know. So I skipped over this one. It said, everyone encouraged to wear a mask all the time. So apparently that's what he thinks is his plan. Hopefully he's got a written plan, but that's just a position statement. That's not a plan. So he wants all of us to wear a mask all the time. I don't want to wear a mask when I'm in the car. I don't want to wear a mask when I'm in the shower. Honestly, I don't want to wear a mask at all, former VP Biden, but I do it sometimes to respect people, and I do it where I'm required, mostly. I'm not going to do it outside. There's an infringement of freedoms, but it's like, that's getting into people's business. That's getting into people's business. He wants to be in your business. Wear your mask while you're sleeping next to your spouse. He said all the time. All is all, right? All the time. Wear your mask when you're on the toilet. Wear your mask when you're showering. All the time. All is all. Wear your mask when you're eating. Okay. So I'm being a little hard on him, forgive me. I'm sure he's a great man, but that is a position statement. That's not a plan. I would make sure we move in the direction of rapid testing, investing in rapid testing. I don't know. Maybe he's got a point there. I don't know if the president has opposed positions of rapid testing or investing in it or not. I don't know. It would surprise me if the president hasn't looked into it and has something going in that vein, but I don't know. I wonder though if what the former VP means is requiring rapid testing, requiring you when you, let's say, go to the shopping mall to take a test and wait until it's done, or you enter the airport to get tested before you can go to your gate and travel. I wonder if that's what he's saying. If he's not talking about just the technology of being able to do rapid testing, but actually mandated rapid testing. I don't know. What does he say? What is this? He doesn't say here. So I wonder what he says on his website or what he said in other venues. And then he says, I would make sure we set up national standards as to how to open up schools and businesses so they can be safe, and give them the wherewithal, the financial resources to be able to do that. Okay, so he wants schools and businesses to be safe. Awesome. He wants to open them up. Great. That's great. Okay, so he's saying he would like to open these things up. Perfect. I like that. But he says national standards. So I have to wonder what that means. Right now, I believe the president is in taking a position, if I'm not wrong, of advising how states might want to do it, or providing tools and resources to help them do it safely, but acknowledging that every city and every state is different. They have different needs and different cultures and whatever, and leaving it up to them to implement what it actually looks like if they do anything at all. And so what I hear here, and I could just be reading into this, is that mandates. I hear mandates, not just national standards, but mandates of how every school and business must open up across the country. And again, it's a big country, and every state has different laws, and you know, there's all sorts of differences across this country. So I don't think that sounds like a great idea if you're talking about there's one way to do it and you apply that across all the country. You know, ask people who live in the EU, how's the EU thing been? You know, I've heard some stories, and maybe this is just the exception, but you know, that whole globalization, standardization, one way to do thing being implemented across the EU has kind of squeezed the uniqueness out of a lot of areas, out of a lot of businesses and areas, you know, the uniqueness. And because everything is being made cookie cutter. So each area and whatever it excels in its strength may not fit into that category anymore. So that gets squeezed out. And they have to implement to look like the rest of the EU. I could be wrong. I haven't actually, you know, been over there and paid much attention. I've just talked to some people who live there. So think about that. Like, does a one size fits all approach work? If that's even what he's talking about, I don't know. And then this is very important. He says the financial resources to be able to do that. So we're going to go into this later. That's a big statement. That to me says funded by the government. We're going to look at that a little bit later. Okay, we got to get moving. Next one.
President Biden, your reaction, and just 40% of Americans say they would definitely agree to take a coronavirus vaccine if it was approved by the government. What steps would you take to give Americans confidence in a vaccine if it were approved?
Make sure it's totally transparent. Have the scientists of the world see it, know it, look at it, go through all the processes. And by the way, this is the same fellow who told you this is going to end by Easter last time. This is the same fellow who told you that, don't worry, we're going to end this by the summer. We're about to go into a dark winter, and he has no clear plan, and there's no prospect that there's going to be a vaccine available for the majority of the American people before the middle of next year.
President Trump, your reaction, he says you have no plan.
We're going to have a dark winter. And
Okay, so we already looked at President Trump's response to that. That was the former VP starting out talking about vaccines, and what he would do to try to ensure that people had some confidence in the vaccines. So I like the response of opening the vaccines to scrutiny from the outside, so they could be shown to be safe. It's similar to the source of the open source concept in technology and high tech. I kind of like that. That's cool. I would hope that President Trump would do the same thing, to be pretty open about the science behind it, and that auditors and outside people could actually ensure that the vaccines are only vaccines, because there is concern among a lot of people that it could be more than just a vaccine. Now, go through all the processes. I want to highlight that because processes mean time. So what I hear the former vice president here saying is he wants to make sure all the processes are implemented, which is going to mean slowing it down. So if you expedite, you can't have everything, right? You can't open it up to scrutiny and go as fast as you can go at getting it out the door at the same time. You have to allow time for people to scrutinize it. And when you talk about processes, now you're talking about step by step. What if it gets delayed in the process? So I think that go through all the processes thing would actually work against them. Not that it should skip processes, but that it may be a little bit too dreamy and too aggressive, too big a pie in the sky statement. What my opinion is, it's just opinion. The whole this is going to end by Easter last time, I don't remember if the president said that or not. Go search it if you can find it and prove it. Whatever, it doesn't worry me that much. The same fellow who told you, don't worry, we're going to end this by the summer. Again, I don't remember if he said that or not. You can go research it. It doesn't worry me. What I do care about is this. And I don't know why I didn't highlight this, but I'm going to highlight it now so you can see this. All right. So I'm not going to get too spiritual here on you. But the former VP just prophesied we're going to go into really dark times. He's basically, in my opinion, he's talking about COVID, so he's basically prophesying death here. Why would you do that? Why would you prophesy death? What science is behind this? What evidence is behind this? We looked in part one at all the rates. You tell me, if you disagree, okay, leave comments, right? Tell me what rates there were, what things we saw in part one justify saying we're going into a dark winter. I don't see it. I don't see it. Why would you prophesy that? Why would you not make the people hopeful unless you're trying to manipulate them into fear and anger at the president? Why would you prophesy that? Why would you say something like that? That bothers me, honestly. I don't like that. There's no prospect for a vaccine to be available before the middle of the next year, for the majority of people. I don't know. I haven't researched it. I haven't read it. I don't really care about the vaccine, honestly, from my own personal perspective, but I know some people do. So if that matters to you, go check it out, research it. I don't know where that's coming from. The president talks like they're streamlining it and we should have it pretty soon. So we'll see. Time will show who's right, but we don't have that much time before the election. So we got to decide who we can trust.
And of course, the CDC has said young people can get sick with COVID-19 and can pass it. Vice President Biden, I want to talk broadly about strategy, though.
Can I respond to that?
30 seconds, please, and then I have a question.
No, number one, he says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it. You folks home will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. That man or wife going to bed tonight and reaching over to try to touch their, out of habit, where their wife or husband was, is gone. Learning to live with it. Come on. We're dying with it because he has never said, he said it's dangerous. When's the last time? Is it really dangerous still? Are we dangerous? You tell the people it's dangerous now? What should they do about the danger? And you say, I take no responsibility.
Let me talk about your
All right, let's look at that. Right. I disagree with the learning to live with it thing in the sense that there's an implication that it's accepting it. I believe I would rather say we are learning to live while we defeat it. It's not going to stay. Now, this next statement bothers me. People are learning to die with it. You folks home, not sure what English that is. You folks home will have an empty chair. It was an at there. You folks at home will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. Will you? Will you? Is he telling you that someone in your household is going to die? That I don't like that. I don't like that. That man or wife going to bed tonight and reaching over to try to touch their out of habit where their wife or husband was is gone. Wait, the man is gone or the wife or husband was? I think I know what he's saying. The English is really bad, honestly. But I think I understand what he's saying. Learning to live with it. Come on, we're dying with it. We're dying with it. And then he gives a reason. And it's because the president never said what. None of that makes sense to me. And he is prophesying death. He's prophesying fear into you and your household. Let's wind back to part one in the facts. If we look at the predominant age group that's been affected by deaths of this thing, based on the tagging of their death certificates, assuming those are accurate too, that would be a 65 and up age category. By the percentage of the total population of 65 and up people, by my calculations, we are at 0.34% have passed away because of this thing in that age group. 0.34%. And that is like 79%, 80% roughly of all the deaths in the country. Maybe it's a little lower, 78, something like that. It's high. It's most of the deaths that have happened. And 0.34%, which means about 1 in 300 people. So he's telling everybody listening to this, everybody in the country, you folks are going to have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. Man or wife, he's appealing to your gut sense of sympathy. That man or wife tonight reaching over to try to touch, they're out of habit, their wife or husband wasn't gone. I mean, look, come on, we're dying with it. That's just dark. I'm sorry, but that's just dark. And it's just appealing to the raw emotion in you of fear, of a sense of being uncomfortable with this virus, trying to tap into fear and make you worried and believe what he is saying. I believe it's just wrong. It's not good. It's not prophesying hope. It's not at all. It's saying you folks will have an empty chair. Those are his words. You folks will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. Those are his words, not mine. I don't like that. I don't like that. I want positivity. I want somebody who's going to be optimistic, try to do the right thing, but keep people pointed in an optimistic direction. I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing that here. All I'm seeing is fear. You said it's dangerous. When was the last time? Is it really dangerous still? And are we dangerous? You tell the people it's dangerous now. What should they do about the danger? And you say, I take no responsibility. That's all over the map. Like, what is he saying? What is he saying? What is he? I don't get it. If you guys get it, explain it to me, please. I just don't get what he's saying. I don't follow it. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I just don't follow speech, but I don't like this negativity. I really don't. Now, I'm not trying to pick at the vice president, the former vice president. I don't want to pick at him. I'm just saying these are his words, and it's dark. It's like appealing to bad stuff. You know, the president didn't cause this, and he doesn't want people to die. Who wants people to die? Nobody. But I want somebody to give me hope, you know, to prophesy hope. Let's continue.
Vice President Biden.
The fact is that when we knew it was coming, when it hit, what happened? What did the president say? He said, don't worry, it's going to go away. Be gone by Easter. Don't worry, the warm weather. Don't worry, maybe inject bleach. He said he was kidding when he said that, but a lot of people thought it was serious. A whole range of things the president has said. Even today, he thinks we are in control. We're about to lose 200,000 more people.
Okay, let's look at this.
President.
Oh, okay. The former VP claims we knew it was coming. Okay, we knew China had a problem. But I sympathize and give the president the benefit of the doubt that I don't think we knew exactly what the extent of that problem was and how contagious it was. Maybe we did. I don't know, but let's see the proof. Let's see the proof that the president knew all these things and deliberately withheld that information. I don't think we did, because I think he would have reacted far earlier. Even if he didn't tell people what he knew, he would have reacted and done something to shut down the borders and such earlier, I believe, if he knew that. So we knew it was coming. Yes, okay, yeah, we knew there was a China thing, but we tried to stop it from coming, is what I see the president having done. The question is, how much did we know before any action was taken? I'm giving the president the benefit of the doubt. I don't know. I don't have a way to know. I'm not in classified, you know, have access to classified documents or anything. I don't know. But let's just be fair. The former VP wasn't in that situation. And if we want to challenge, and I'm not doing this, you can go back and do this. Go look at that contested period of time in March, April, May, when they were wrangling over legislation, they were wrangling over reopening and all this stuff and closing. What was the former VP saying at that time? What was he saying at that time versus what President Trump is saying? That would be revealing. I haven't done that research, so I can't tell you. He said, don't worry, it's going away. It'll be gone by Easter. I don't know if he said that. Don't worry, warm weather. I do remember something about warm weather. I do. And I do remember him being encouraging, saying, basically, I think he was basically saying, like, the flu kind of goes away in warm weather. Summer is coming. People are going to be out. It's going to get better because, like, the flu decreases. This thing is going to decrease too because the weather's getting warmer. Well, in some respects, that was maybe true, but in some respects not. We did have a spike during the summer too. So I don't know, but is that a bad thing? You know, don't worry, warm weather. I mean, he's basically saying, don't encourage people to be hopeful, to me, is what I'm hearing. Now, the bleach thing. So this one bothers me. The president was, I went back and listened to that thing they were talking about a long time ago, so I don't remember the exact details. But as I recall, and I have a friend who kept bringing this up, and I totally respect him. I don't remember the president being at all adamant about injecting bleach into people. I remember there being something about maybe you could test whether there was such a solution like bleach or some sort of cleaning agent that could somehow be medically extracted and turned into a therapeutic agent. It's kind of how I heard it, right? Not saying, I don't remember, or when I heard it, I didn't hear, you should just take bleach and inject it into people's veins. Maybe he said that, and I'm thinking of something different. I don't know. Either way, I don't think the president is dumb. I know he's not. He's a very smart man, and that would be a really dumb thing to say. So whatever he said, if he said something like that, I gotta think it was probably in jest, whatever. But I don't think he even said it that blatantly, like people are accusing him of. I think it was a little different wording than that. So anyways, let's move on. That's not even important. This last sentence, we're about to lose 200,000 more people. There it again. He's prophesying death. He's prophesying 200,000 more deaths, which is way above the current death rate, and is way above the death rate he himself, the incorrect death rate that he himself cited earlier of 1,000 per day. Well above that, because he's talking before the end of the year. He already said that earlier in his speech. So it's just wrong. It's just wrong. He doesn't know that. He couldn't know that unless he knows something, unless he's in on something that we don't know. He couldn't know that. I'm sorry. Let's be real.
Okay, let's talk about your different strategies toward dealing with this. Mr. Vice President, you suggested you would support new shutdowns if scientists recommended it. What do you say to Americans who are fearful that the cost of shutdowns, the impact on the economy, the higher rates of hunger, depression, domestic and substance abuse outweighs the risk of exposure to the virus?
What I would say is I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. It's his ineptitude that caused the country to have to shut down in large part. Why businesses have gone under, why schools are closed, why so many people have lost their living, and why they're concerned. Those other concerns are real. That's why he should have been, instead of in a sand trap in his golf course, he should have been negotiating with Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats and Republicans about what to do about the acts they were passing for billions of dollars to make sure people had the capacity.
But you haven't ruled out more shutdowns.
Well, no, I'm not shutting down the name, but there are, look, you need standards. The standard is if you have a reproduction rate in a community that's above a certain level, everybody says, slow up, more social distancing, do not open bars and do not open gymnasiums, do not open until you get this under control, under more control. But when you do open, give the people the capacity to be able to open and have the capacity to do it safely. For example, schools. Schools, they need a lot of money to open. They need to deal with ventilation systems. They need to deal with smaller classes, more teachers, more pods. And he's refused to support that money, or at least up to now.
Okay, let's look at this. The former VP says, I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. Well, if he was that good, he ought to just start a company and charge for it because he'd make a ton of money. He is not the master over this virus. And I don't think he has a plan to do it. I don't believe he has a real plan to do it. Honestly, I don't. Where is it? Masks? Masks hasn't stopped it so far. And then he says it's his ineptitude that caused the country to have to shut down in large part, why businesses have gone under, why schools are closed, why so many people have lost their living and they're concerned. That's offensive to me. When this thing first came down, like I said before, the president was in a really tough situation. I don't think any of us would ever want to be in. He had to make some hard choices, and I think he made good ones. You know, he did shut down the economy, the country for a short while. And a lot of people, including many of the people that the former VP is talking about, and maybe the former VP himself, were arguing it should stay shut down for even longer. So before you believe what he's saying there, go back and at least research the statements of some of these folks in like April when the president was talking about reopening. What were their positions? Because as I recall, he had a lot of opposition to reopening, a lot of opposition to reopening. And I'm glad he did. He delayed reopening beyond, I think, when he wanted to, because he had so much opposition. I'm guessing that's why he did it. I don't know. But he reopened, and there was a lot of opposition to that. Who was that opposition coming from? Was it former VP Biden? Was it his counterparts? If so, well, then aren't they arguing that it should have been shut down? Yet he's blaming the shutdown on the president. What? And then why businesses have gone under? If they've gone under because of the shutdown, but if these people were arguing the shutdown should be longer, what? Why schools are closed? Yeah, wanting to go through all sorts of process and hoopla and not open schools. And where are schools closed in various states? I can tell you in Oregon, they're closed. As far as I know, they're closed. There's some very strict rules where they're closed entirely. I don't know. But I know people who sent their children across the river to other schools because they can actually go to school there. So why so many people have lost their living? That's not fair. Where is that coming from? By the way, the sentence structure here is just horrible, but I don't want to, yeah. Forgive me, Lord. I'm not going to go there. Now he talks about negotiating with Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats about these acts they were passing for billions. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't billions. It was trillions of dollars to make sure people had the capacity to do what? To do what? Okay, incomplete statement, but I think we probably can guess what he was trying to say. And what I want to say about that, I didn't go back and research this, but I remember back, and maybe I'm remembering wrong. The president, and I think it was a fairly bipartisan thing, the initial bill, came up with I believe it was a $1.2 trillion stimulus plan. $1.2 trillion. And the president and the rest of the Republican Party, as I recall, were trying to get that passed. And as I recall, again, I could be wrong, hit me up in comments if this is wrong, whatever, send me the link to the data that shows the evidence. Because if you don't send me evidence, I'm going to ignore it. I'm sorry. I believe it was Nancy Pelosi and some of the others, Democrats, and maybe even some Republicans, I don't know. But there were people holding that up, unwilling to pass it, because they wanted to get their own spending. I want to say pork barrel. I can't tell you for sure it was pork barrel, but they wanted to get their own projects. So that $1.2 trillion bill became 2 trillion, and then I think ended up becoming 4 trillion, or there were two different bills or something related. But anyways, they held it up to negotiate for more of their own projects in there. So they held it up at a time when people were needing help, but they held up the help from getting to them when the president and others was trying to pass that bill. So that's what I remember happened. If that is not what you remember happened, feel free to go check it out. I may do that too, check out the timeline of that whole thing going down. But that's what I remember happened. The president was trying to rush through the spending plan, stimulus plan, and it was 1.2 trillion, if I'm not mistaken, at first, and then it bloated way beyond that, way beyond that. And it didn't bloat because they wanted to, it bloated because it kept getting held up and people were demanding their own stuff in. Okay, so then he says, oh, well, no, I'm not shutting down today, but there are what? Look, you need standards. The standard is if you have a reproduction rate, wait, reproduction. I'm not sure that's quite the word he was probably looking for. Reproduction rate in a community is above a certain level. Everybody says, slow up, more social distancing. I'm sorry, that's not a plan. That's what's happening today. That's not a plan. Is that your plan, former VP Biden? When it gets bad, everybody says, slow up, more social distancing, do not open bars and do not open gyms. Wait, I thought they were already open. That was my understanding. They were already open, but then the rate went up. Or were they not already open? What are we talking about? Do not open until you get this under control, under more control. When are you opening? Were the bars and restaurants already open or not? When do you open them? Because we're talking about a community where the reproduction rate, as former VP said, was lower and then went above a certain level. What is that level? But it was lower and stuff wasn't open. And then it went above a certain level. And you're saying you can't open now. Don't open until it gets back down. But at what lower level do you allow them to open? I don't get it. None of it makes sense. I'm sorry. Maybe if you understand it, like, let's get coffee and you can explain it to me. But when you do open, give the people the capacity to be able to open and have the capacity to do it safely. What does he mean by capacity? Capacity. He's not meaning space, I don't think. Maybe he is. Maybe he means build bigger buildings. For example, schools, they need a lot of money. Oh, money, that's what he means, money to be open. They need to deal with ventilation systems. Smaller classes, more teachers, more pods in schools. Well, forget passing your notes between each other anymore. He's refused to support that money, or at least up till now. That's what the former VP says. So this is about money. He wants to give a lot of money to businesses and schools. That's apparently his plan. That's going to make everything better. But then we go back to the slow up, more social distancing, don't open bars. Like, I'm still totally confused as to what his plan is there. I'm sorry. That was a really confusing, statement by the former VP. I haven't quite figured it out, except that he wants more money to give to people, to give to schools, and who knows what else. I'm sorry, I don't want you to think I'm against a former VP, because I'm not. I'm sure he's a nice man. I'm a little irritated at some of his responses. They're not well thought out, in my opinion, and they're not accurate. The data is not even accurate. We just looked at it. Unless all the public data we're looking at is lying to us, the data is not even accurate.
Down.
Vice President Biden, your
Simply
response.
not true. We ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We ought to be able to safely open, but would they need resources to open? You need to be able to, for example, if you're going to open a business, have social distancing within the business. You need to have, if you have a restaurant, you need to have plexiglass dividers so people cannot infect one another. You need to be in a position where you can take testing rapidly and know whether a person is in fact infected. You need to be able to trace. You need to be able to provide all the resources that are needed to do this. And that is not inconsistent with saying that what we're going to make sure that we can open safely. And by the way, all you teachers out there, not that many of you are going to die, so don't worry about it. Come on.
Okay, let's look at this. This whole walk and chew gum thing at the same time, I'm still scratching my head. What are you talking about, walking and chewing gum? It's not important, so we won't go there. We ought to be able to safely open, but they need more resources to open. You need to be able to, for example, if you're going to open a business, have social distancing within the business. So what does he mean by more resources? Does he mean money? That's what he means. So now social distancing is mandated everywhere and enforced somehow. And there's some sort of resources needed to make it happen. Like, have you been to a retailer lately, a grocery store? They've all got X's on the floors or whatever. They've all, I mean, this is already done. This is already done. Like, what's he talking about? You need to have, if you have a restaurant, you need to have plexiglass dividers so people cannot infect one another. Blah. How sterile. I would not want to go to the restaurant. That's like I agree with the president earlier when he said that's not the way we live life. That's not good, Mr. Biden. That's not good. Like, that's not the answer here. Plexiglass everywhere. Maybe somebody owns plexiglass companies is going to get really, probably already gotten really wealthy off of this. I don't know. Hopefully it's not China that's shipping them to us, because that'll just further the trade deficit. Maybe it's plexiglass thing, like shifting money into plexiglass, and there goes the money to China again. Hopefully it's staying in America. Off that soapbox there. You need to be in a position where you can take testing rapidly and know whether the person is in fact infected. So is he talking about in a restaurant? So you go, and we were just talking about restaurants. So is he talking about you want to go in a restaurant, you have to stop, you have to get swabbed, you have to wait 30 seconds or however many minutes for some machine somewhere that they got to do a rapid test on you, and if it, you know, is it even going to be accurate in that point? So if it falsely says you have COVID, now if it says you have COVID, whether you do or don't, because it's a rapid test machine, and who knows what the accuracy might be at that point if it's in a restaurant, do you get put on some list? And now you have to go self-quarantine for 14 days because you tried to go to a restaurant? I don't know. I don't know if that's what he's talking about. You need to be in a position where you can take testing rapidly and know whether the person is in fact infected. You need to be able to trace. So he's for tracing. He's for contact tracing. So are we talking about mandated tracing? Are we talking about mandated tracing in phones and stuff like that? What are you talking about, former VP Biden? What is your plan? I'm not saying this is a plan. I'm saying this is position statements, not a plan. What is your plan? If you say you have a plan, you need to be able to provide all the resources that are needed to do this. Okay, AKA money. That's what that means, I think. You have to provide all the resources. He's talking about the government providing all the resources to do this, I think. That means money. That means money and time, because this can't be done overnight. And that is not inconsistent with saying that we're going to make sure we're going to open safely. Not necessarily inconsistent with opening safely, but it's certainly going to slow you down, and it's going to mean you're like, well, yeah, all the bureaucracy around it. Not necessarily, I mean, it's not going to make it less safe to open that way. So it's not inconsistent, but it means you're not going to open now. If you gotta set up all this stuff and you gotta have all this funding, means you got to go get the funding. You got to get the stuff made. You got to get the stuff produced. These businesses have to get it made. A lot of it's already in place, honestly, like grocery stores and stuff, at least here, they got the plexiglass up. It's awful. I don't like it, but they've got it, you know? So I'm not quite getting at this. I'm not sure where he's going with that, but that's not a plan to me. That is not a plan. Those are position statements. In all fairness, I want to challenge that if the former VP is going to accuse the president of not having a plan, he better have one. Where's his plan? And he's not going through it here. Maybe he's got one in print. I can't say. I don't want to say yes or no. Hopefully he's got one in print somewhere that's very clear with timelines and milestones what a real plan is. And then he does a whole like appealing to teachers. Oh, don't worry, not many of you are going to die because the president said schools should reopen. But he's sitting here saying schools should reopen. Yet he's saying you need to have all this to do it. So that means it's not going to reopen yet. Wait until you have all this stuff. Okay. Oops. What did I do? Okay. Let's watch this one. We're almost through.
Take a look
Vice
at what
President
New
Biden.
York has done in terms of turning the curve down in terms of the number of people dying. And I don't look at this in terms of the way he does. Blue states and red states. They're all the United States. And look at the states that are having such a spike in the coronavirus. They're the red states. They're the states in the Midwest. They're the states in the upper Midwest. That's where the spike is occurring significantly. But they're all Americans. They're all Americans. And what we have to do is say, wear these masks, number one. Make sure we get the help that the businesses need that has money's already been passed to do that. It's been out there since the beginning of the summer, and nothing's happened.
President,
Okay. Let's look at this. What New York has done in terms of turning down the curve. In terms of the number of people dying. I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about. Maybe so. But there are some things. I mean, I know New York's been really locked up. The president alluded to that earlier. There are some things that come to mind. The number of people dying, New York has stayed for the entire time I've been tracking at the top of the list in terms of number of deaths. The entire time. So I don't know, maybe there's less people dying now than before, but they're still at the top of the list. Turning the curve down, is he talking about new cases? Is he talking about deaths? Whatever, I don't know. I haven't specifically looked at the data for New York to say one way or another what that might be. I don't know. I don't know what he's really saying, what he's getting at there. Yeah, New York's still at the top of the list in terms of the number of deaths, and they've been locked down. What I can say is if there's been any decrease in the curve, New York has taken the biggest impact, it looks like, from any of them in terms of spread of this thing. So, you know, like I said in part one, the serology studies that CDC did said that New York's probably at least 10 times as many cases in the wild as have been confirmed. So I don't know what their current case count number is. I don't remember. Let's just say it's 3 million, something like no, wait, it wouldn't be 3 million. Yeah, let's say 2 million, 1.5, 2 million, 2 million, 10 times that many would be 20. No, it's got to be less. I don't know what it is because I haven't looked. Go look later maybe, but multiply that by 10. And so if the population size of herd immunity is 67% of the population, then New York is well on its way to herd immunity. That's all I can say. So it wouldn't be anything New York did in terms of turning the curve down if they reach herd immunity and they start seeing this thing peter out. I'm just saying. Now, then he says it's not red or blue, they're all United States. I agree. We shouldn't be poking fingers and stones at people based on their party beliefs or who they're affiliated with. We should be looking at what are they saying and doing. What are they saying and doing? There's some good in the blue and there's some good in the red. There's good on both sides. Let's call out the good and let's stand up to the bad. How about that? And look at these states that are having such a spike in the coronavirus. They're the red states. They're the states in the Midwest. They're the states in the upper Midwest. That's where the spike is occurring significantly. But they're all Americans. They're all Americans. I agree. And what we have to say, what we have to do is say, wear these masks. Number one, make sure we get the help that the businesses need. The money has already been passed to do that. It's been out there since the beginning of the summer and nothing's happened. So he's pushing masks as a solution. Number one, wear the mask. Mask, mask, mask. Man, I wish I'd thought to make a mask company a couple of years ago. That would be would have been just fantastic. Would have been loving life right now, right? Pushing masks. Okay. Assuming masks stop the spread, maybe. Make sure we get the help that the businesses need. So that's money, I think. And he says that there's money already been passed to do that. I don't know. I don't know what legislation he's talking about this beginning out there since the beginning of summer. I don't know what he's talking about. If he's talking about what they've been fighting over, maybe instead of buying his words, you and I should go look at the actual details of the bill that's been contested. And there is one out there that's been, failed many times at getting through because there's been partisan bickering. Maybe we should go look at the details of that bill. What's in it and what are the people who are saying no to it demanding? And who are those people who are saying no to it? Why are they demanding that? Who's holding it up? He's saying nothing's happened. But you know what? The President Trump, he's the head of the executive branch of government. He's not even the head of the legislative branch of government. Now, he's a leader of our country, but that's a whole different thing. Yeah, he's got party influence, but is it the Republicans that are really holding this thing up? I don't know. Go do the research. I haven't done the research. I'm guessing that's what he's getting at, but I don't know for sure. He's not being very clear on it. All right, so we're going to put to the test here that challenge. By the way, that was all for the Biden stuff, former VP Biden. We're through Trump, President Trump. We're through former VP Biden. It's been a long road. Thank you for staying in there with me and being patient. I hope it's been useful to you. But we're not done yet because the former VP and President Trump both have made statements about red and blue states and coronavirus. Let's dig into that a little bit. It just happens that I had a long time ago just wondered, I wonder if there's a correlation, because I was just searching for correlations, right? I wonder if there's a correlation to political leaning as to, which states are affected. And honestly, I didn't think I found any correlation. So that's why I didn't share it. I only pulled that back out now because they're pointing fingers at one another. Red and blue, it's a red and blue thing. So, okay, well, let's see. Is it a red and blue thing after all? Let's see. So to determine red or blue, I'm not looking at legislative branch. I don't have that data, but I got the data for the result of the last presidential election, the 2016 presidential election by party. And so basically labeled whether the data says that state went Democrat or Republican in the 2016 presidential election. And, I flag it red or blue here. What you can see is that August 8th, so not when I first started tracking the data, but I pulled up August 8th because that is when I added this political column in. I didn't have it before back in June. I could go back and add it, but I didn't want to go do that. So I added that in sometime in early August. So August 8th is the first date I have that it has that. We can see that at that time, the order of states in terms of highest number of deaths was New York, New Jersey, California, Massachusetts, Texas, Florida, Illinois. You can see it right here. The top four were Democratic in the last presidential election. I don't know what their governorship is. Well, actually, I do. New York is, I believe New York is Democratic, but I'm not sure. California is Democratic. I think Massa's and New Jersey, I think so too, but I'm not sure. Texas, Republican governor there, I'm pretty sure, and the same with Florida. But this was in the presidential election. So spots 5 and 6 are Republican there. Then 7 is Democrat. Then we get 2 more Republican, Democrat, former Republican, then Democrat. So we can see there's a mix. I don't, to me, that's not a correlation because these labeled Democrat, these are some of the largest, well, Massachusetts, not the largest state, but California, New Jersey, New York, there's some of the states with the highest population. So I didn't see enough of a correlation to say it's by party. If 12 out of the 15 had been Democratic or Republican, maybe then, but it seems to be a pretty good mix. However, when we look at it on October 22nd, we do see a shifting. Yet it's still relatively the same number of these things in the top 15. So, you know, whereas it was the top 4 were Democratic in August 8th, now it's the 3 of the top 4 are Democratic. And the second one, Texas, has moved up to the number 2 spot. And that is went Republican, right? Florida actually was moved up 1 spot. It was 6 before, it's 5 now. And we had some Democratic states move up, it looks like. Connecticut moved down, but then we have what, Massachusetts moved down. Illinois was stayed at 7. So that's what happened. Florida moved up a little bit. Texas moved up. Massachusetts came down. Remember, this is ordered by the raw just number of deaths, which as of October 22nd, the top state was 33,000 in New York. By the way, here's the answer to our cases in New York, 526,000. So 10 times that many would be 5 million. If their population is 20 million, they'd need 67% of that, be roughly 14 million, I think, something like that, if I'm not mistaken. So they're not at herd immunity probably yet, but they're pretty good on their way. I mean, pretty good progress. So I don't see anything here personally that is pointing at it's a Democratic thing, it's a Republican thing. These are big states. They're big states. They have high populations and they've got problems. New York's been at the lead since June. Okay. Now maybe its rate of number of cases has slowed and number of deaths has slowed a bit, but it's been in the lead since June. Now Texas is climbing up, but it's surpassed in the number of cases, but its number of deaths is much lower, half the number of New York right now. So it's still got a while to go. And I just don't see anything here suggesting that it's a Republican or Democratic thing. I think, see, before we had 7 Democratic states and 8 Republican states in the top 15. There was one change in that sense. The October 22nd, we have 7 Democratic, is that right? 6 Democratic states and 9 Republican states, I think. But that it's a little bit deceiving because I think, if I remember correctly, that was North Carolina coming up. I think Maryland just bumped down one. And North Carolina's population is much larger than Maryland's. So it's not that surprising that North Carolina would eventually end up a little bit higher because it's got a much larger population, I believe, than Maryland does. Anyways, all that to say, I don't see any basis for saying this is the occurrence of cases and the deaths or anything has a Republican or Democratic correlation. But that's just me. That's just me. So do what you will with it. We also have to remember the size of these states. So here we see that California is the biggest. And when we talk about North Carolina and Maryland, North Carolina is 10 million there. Maryland is down here, number 19 with 6 million. So we would expect if there was the same propagation rate in every state, and I think that's probably more the word VP Biden was using, not reproduction, but propagation rate he was looking for. But if there was the same propagation rate, then the larger states by population would end up at some point having more cases and more deaths. It would just make sense. All right. So the last thing I want to cover related to those discussions is particularly with former VP Biden's claims. He talks a lot about money, about resources. Make sure they have the capacity, make sure they have this, that, and the other. We can't afford it. We can't afford all this stuff that he's talking about. There has to come an end to the ridiculous spending. I mean, it's one thing to say we have to help this one segment of the population, but we can't keep doing it forever. We can't just afford to throw money at whatever we want to. We don't have it. We're borrowing it. We're borrowing it. Our debt is crazy right now, if you ask me. I'm not comfortable with it. If you go to this website, usdebtclock.org, it's pretty interesting, actually. So I took some of the highlights out of it from here. I already knew this. $27 trillion is the size of our current debt. That's how much money we owe. Our GDP, I think, is 18 or 19 trillion dollars. So we owe more money than our entire country brings in a year. I mean, forget like what part of it goes to government or not. Like that's what's going into your and not in my pocket, and like everybody who makes money is going into households. It's all the money from US earnings is like 18, 19 trillion a year. That's the GDP. And we're at 27 trillion right now in debt. That's not good. That's not good. The deficit, budget deficit, is sitting at 3.17 trillion US dollars. That's not good. And to help make sense of how bad this is, look at how this ratio of the federal debt, which is 27 trillion today, to GDP, which is around 18 to 19 trillion, I think. Look at how it's changed over time. In 1960, the ratio was 52%. So our debt was only about half of the size of our GDP. 1980, it went down by 1980 at 35%. That's awesome. That's the direction we should be going in. 2000, it went back up to 56%. By 2016, it was at 106%. So it almost doubled in 16 years. And then in 4 years, It's gone from 106% to 137%. Now, before we blame the president for this, think about what we have passed in this year alone. And former VP Biden is saying we need to borrow more money to give away to businesses for this thing. That's what he's saying. I mean, I don't know the exact number. It's been at least 4 trillion, I think, that we passed in spending this year just for coronavirus stuff, just for these bills, and who knows what else, right? So just this year, you know, our debt has gone from at least 23 trillion to 27 trillion. There may be some other spending I'm not aware of. It's crazy. We cannot afford this. We can't afford this. That's not wise. When you look at the debt burden on a per household basis and a per taxpayer basis, it's crazy. The per household basis, I forget, or per person basis is I think almost 100,000 or maybe a little over 100,000 per person. And then the per taxpayer is like 3 times that, because there's a lot of people who aren't paying taxes. I'm not sure why. They're not working, they're young, they're old. I don't know why. A lot of people not paying taxes. And so when you look at it on a per taxpayer basis, it's like over 300,000, I think. If we were to pay off our debt, then every single taxpayer would have to pay like 300 something thousand to the government to do it, to pay off the debt. That's huge. We cannot keep carrying this debt. I just got to preach that. We can't keep carrying this debt. So when former VP Biden, his solutions are all about spending, all about providing resources and money, it sounds appealing to you and me. Oh, more stimulus check. Yeah. But we got to think about our children. We got to think about the next generations. We can't keep carrying this debt. Who's taking a lot of this debt? I mean, in the past, I mean, some of it's taken internally, but how much of it's taken by China? How much is taken outside the US and Europe and other places? Like, who owns it? It's better if Americans own the debt, but who owns it? And then we go and issue more debt. Who's going to own that? We can't keep doing this. Come on. And so I just got to say that former VPs Biden's plan seems to be heavily focused on spending, and it is very unwise, in my opinion, for us to keep running up our debt like this. We need to be driving down our deficit and driving down our debt as fast as we can, as soon as we can. And we're not in a position to do that anytime soon. We need to get into that position. We need to stop the crazy spending now, get into that position and start taking care of our debt. That's just my opinion. But you decide for yourself. Look at the numbers. It's crazy. All right. So let's talk about this. Government actions, right? I'm not going to go there because I haven't researched it, but I want to ask you, what has your state government done here? What actions have they taken? What have your regional governments done? What are your thoughts on them? What results have those actions had in terms of health and economic impact and social impact and other things? Process that, because you should have an opinion. You should form an opinion on that. That's what I think. We all should be informed and have an opinion and be able to justify it and support our position. So conclusions to this part, the presidential debates. It appears to me there's a very stark difference in sentiment in the outlook between these two candidates. Very stark one. President Trump seems very hopeful, giving a message of hope and trying to encourage hope in people. Vice President Pence, what just happened? I don't know. Vice President Pence seems to be doing a lot of, honestly, I don't know what to say except for fear mongering, making people feel scared like they're going to die. He did use some what seemed to be blatantly false or incorrect numbers, whether intentional or not, I don't know, but they're not correct. The data suggests they are not correct. I'm sorry. And there's a stark difference. Vice President, former VP Biden's message is very, did I say Pence? It's late, I'm tired. I meant Biden. But former VP Biden's message is very dark. It's dark. He even prophesied a dark winter. I'm sorry, I don't want darkness in the White House. I stand with the president. I'm proud of the president. I'm just giving you my opinion. You can think whatever you want, but I don't want darkness in the White House. If I'm going to have somebody in that White House, I want them speaking hope. I want them being honest, but I want them speaking hope and encouragement. I don't want them getting the whole country depressed. And there seems to be lots of mudslinging. But for me, the accusations from VP Biden toward President Trump of his responsibility for the deaths of people are particularly troublesome. They're unwarranted, it's evil, it's wrong, it's not supported by the circumstances. If you go back and you try to put yourself in the president's shoes, he's not come out with any data suggesting the president had secret knowledge that he sat on with malicious intent. He's not produced anything like that. He's mudslinging, but it's evil. I mean, to accuse somebody of murder, which is basically when you put the responsibility for somebody's death on the head of another, you're basically equating that, and it's basically murder. That's evil. He's our president. He's done a great job, and I support him. I'm sorry, I support him. And I will just tell you, I will be voting for President Trump again, I believe. I'm certain. I'm going to. Not I believe. And it's not only for this issue. There's other issues, but like that's just evil to do that to somebody, to claim he's responsible for their deaths. It wasn't like a war he sent people in to die or anything like that. This got dropped out of nowhere on us. It's not his fault. COVID policy setting. So President Trump seems to maintain favor maintaining state and local policy setting. So he talks a lot about states and their actions, because his track record and what he seems to be favoring, consistent with his track record, is enabling states to be successful. So providing them the support they need logistically, trying to drive some of the science behind it and get vaccines and get them out, but letting the states take care of their own states. So just being support structure to the states. To me, I think that's how this country was designed to be. It was designed to be a republic of states, with the federal government not having a controlling role in everybody's life, but that the federal government is a support structure over the states, and not a controlling structure as much as a support structure. Now, former VP Joe Biden seems to favor federal mandates. He's not using those words, but he's talking a lot about control. He's saying, I'm going to end this thing. He's saying we have to have standards. Well, I mean, President Trump has set standards too, right? But they're standards that can be implemented by states, right? For the most part, right? The CDC will come up with standards, or whoever, right? Come up with standards, and then they have to be, they get implemented by states, but the states can often opt to do their own thing, right? The impression I get, and I could be wrong, from former VP Biden, is that he wants to mandate these standards be implemented. He wants to drive a lot of funding to mandate fiscal structure changes and all this stuff. We can't afford that stuff. And that's not the federal government's role, in my opinion, to be that controlling and that in your business. COVID policy implications. President Trump's position is already being lived out. Like he's been at the head of this thing, leading us from day one. And I'm proud of him. I think he's done a great job. I do. I think he's done a great job. I'm proud of him. Thank you, God, for President Trump, and thank you, President Trump, for making hard decisions. Now, I'm not speaking badly against former VP Biden. I'm just saying I think President Trump's done a good job, and I can't imagine being in his shoes. Former VP Biden's stance appears to have big financial commitments, which we simply cannot afford. I'm sorry. It's not fiscally wise. I'm not a believer in carrying a lot of debt. It's just not fiscally wise. And for a nation to be that indebted, not good. Slower reopening process, because he talks a lot about process, a lot about having to implement these fiscal structure changes and ventilation. All that stuff takes a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of build out, a lot about spacing. He's talking about a lot of process around vaccine. Well, process takes time. Process adds time, means slower. So I think that former VP Biden has not laid out in this debate, maybe it's on his website, any clear plan. He talks a lot about plan, but where's the money? Like the money is something that actually looks like a plan you might implement in business. Should have very clear objectives and timelines and measurements and all this stuff. Where is it? Show me the money. And maybe it's just my fault that I haven't gone to his website yet to look, because I needed to get this out there. But yeah, I'll probably go look. I'm curious to see if he does have one. So I'm not against former VP Biden. I think he's probably a nice man. I don't like his stance here. I don't like his stance on COVID. I don't like his stance, his mudslinging and trying to put the heads of people who've suffered and passed away on President Trump. I think that's evil and wrong. I don't like it. So I believe, and this is just my opinion, I'm not telling you how to vote. For me, I'll be siding with President Trump on this one. Yeah, and I'm proud of the job he's done. You know, I can't imagine having been in his shoes again. It's just, what a hard position to be in when this all went down and going through all this. I don't know how he does it. The flack he gets, I don't know how he does it. It's amazing. He's able to like stay positive and stay in there. Like, I'm proud of him. I think that's great. But I want a president that will be encouraging and hopeful, that will stand by and do what he says he's going to do. And he has done that. For example, President Trump's been a friend to Israel. I love that. He said he was going to move the embassy to Jerusalem. He did, right? He stands by his word when he says he's going to do something. And that's the kind of man I want leading my country and leading this quote unquote crisis. So all that to say, I hope this has been useful to you. We're at the end. In fact, I can end sharing now. And then I can say bye to you. This has been really long. If you watched every minute of this, thank you. This has been a long journey and I've had a lot to say. I didn't want it to be this long. I guess I just talk a lot. I'm sorry, but I got to get it out there. So I got to post it. I can't redo it again before the election, maybe after, but thank you. Thank you for watching this. And I hope it's been useful. I mean, I did this out of love because I feel like I've done research and I can offer you something maybe that you haven't had the time to do, or maybe you don't know how to do. And if I can help you in some way, then I want to do that. That's why I'm doing this. I'm not trying to tell you how to vote. If you vote for former VP Biden, I will not hate you. I will love you. Totally respect that. We should vote as our hearts lead. But I want to challenge each and every one of you who listen to this, that do not vote by, don't judge the book by its cover. Dig in, understand what the contents of the book are, understand what you're voting for. Vote for the agenda and the platform, for the values being espoused, because that's a reflection of how they're actually going to wield the authority. Don't judge the book by its cover, please. I've done that in the past, and it was a mistake. So this is way too important. Our country is in the balance. Let's vote with integrity. Let's vote with intentionality, and let's vote informed. So God bless you. Wow, thank you for taking the time to watch that with me. Thank you so much. If it was helpful to you, please click like, leave a comment. If you would like more, leave a comment, let me know that. Subscribe to the channel. This channel is not intended to be for this kind of message all the time. And in fact, I intend to use it more for releasing prophetic in the future. But I need a place to put this. So I'm willing to do more of this in the future if I can, as my time allows. This is not my job. But if you really enjoyed this and you got value out of it, and you would like to see more, and you want to just pay it forward and help support me, let me know. I don't have a way for you to do that right now, because that's not why I did it. I really don't actually have a way to do that. But if you're interested in that, let me know and I'll figure it out. Because certainly I do plan to upgrade my media equipment and do more things. But yeah, I'm going to do those anyways. But if you want to help support that because you've been blessed, great. If not, that's okay. That's not why I did it. I did this because I love you and I want you to be blessed and have truth. So may God prosper you. May God's shalom come upon you, and may God's blessing carry with you and your family now and forevermore, in Jesus' name.